I guess it says something like high crimes and all. I don't know how you can impeach somebody who's done a great job.
We know what the president did, and we know when he knew it. Mr. Goldman, who personally asked President Zelensky to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden?
President Trump.
Who stood on the White House lawn and confirmed that he wanted Ukraine to investigate Vice President Biden?
President Trump.
Mr. Goldman.
Who let the dogs out?
Trump.
Mr. Goldman.
Who let the cats out?
Trump.
Mr. Goldman.
Who let them cows out?
Trump.
Mr. Goldman.
Who cut the cheese?
Trump.
That's what I do.
You're despicable.
All right, well, the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur conspiracy, the last show of 2019. Yeah. So I don't know how I feel about it. In fact, oh my one thing, this is the last show of the decade. All right, so we will see you next year. We will see you next decade, except not tomorrow. I'm stealing your thunder there, but so tomorrow we do have a day off. Sorry, but today we're on. Obviously, we're live, and we have a ton of news, foreign policy news, of course, campaign news. Is Biden also going to name a Republican Secretary of State and a Secretary of Defense? You never know. Okay. So anyway, campaign news a little bit later in the program, and yeah, that's all I got. Okay, fun for everybody. You know, the beginning of next year, apparently I had slightly more. In the beginning of next year, we will become adults. It'll be the Young Turks' 18th anniversary in February.
Some of us will become adults.
I know, some of us remain children forever. But we should restart up TYT University because Young Turks is going to college, we're 18.
Oh my God, can you imagine though?
Yeah.
Like if we could just go back to college.
Oh.
I just want to be a college student for the rest of my life.
Oh my God, that sounds so good.
It sounds so good. You guys don't know how good you have it if you are a college student. Except for the whole debt thing.
Except for the debt thing, and you're screwed.
That sucks.
But and your life is ruined. But other than that, or we should pull a Joe Biden. Give me a break. You think you have it tough? Give me a break.
No, look, we're gonna talk about Joe Biden later in the show. I just wanna say one quick thing, and I didn't feel this way about Joe Biden before. Before I just disagreed with his politics. I have come to dislike him.
No.
I now dislike him.
You know, let's save it for later because I've also changed my mind on how I feel about Joe Biden. It's sad. And let's also note for the record is we're finally going to do the news that Anna is sending off the 2010s in a lovely lavender sweater that she obviously borrowed from Ken Klippenstein.
I was jealous that he was wearing such a lovely color all the time, so we're competing now.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
My favorite color, by the way. All right, Ken knew that.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about some foreign policy news. Looks like Trump is looking to wage more war. So, following the launch of US airstrikes against an Iranian-backed militia group in Iraq, thousands of Iraqi protesters demonstrated at the US Embassy in Baghdad. Now, demonstrated might be a little bit of a euphemism, to be fair, because some of these protests actually became pretty violent, and one area of the compound was actually set ablaze. So some of the demonstrators allegedly attempted to break into the embassy, although that is being reported by mainstream media outlets, and take that with a grain of salt. However, we do have video evidence showing that some of these protesters did light the compound on fire. Luckily, based on reports, no one was hurt. Now, the attacks are a response to US airstrikes against an Iran-backed militia that formally sits under the control of Iraq's prime minister. The airstrikes have caused tensions with Baghdad, where officials accused the US of attacking without sufficient evidence, violating Iraqi sovereignty and threatening the country's security. Now, the Iranian-backed militia group is known as Kataib Hezbollah, and it seems like the group is accepted by the Iraqi government. However, the Iraqi government does have an obligation to protect the US Embassy and US workers within the country. Now, exactly how many US workers are there in the country? Well, it's not clear how many people are inside the embassy, but it is the US's largest diplomatic mission in the world with around 16,000 staff. The compound covers around 100 acres, around the same size as the Vatican City. And in addition to that, you have about 5,000 active US military members in Iraq as well. So there is growing frustration among Iraqis regarding US presence in the country. They feel that they're the sovereign nature of their country is being jeopardized, that the US has absolutely no intentions of leaving. And it's understandable that they think that way because we have 16,000 people working in the embassy alone. That's insane.
Yeah, so let me start by giving just a little extra detail on the current state of affairs, and then I want to back up and tell you how we got here. So you saw with the video that they lit a small part of the outside of the embassy on fire. There's a little fog of war here. Some outlets are reporting that they broke into the reception area of the embassy and set that ablaze as well. Others are saying that nothing was breached. But either way, guys, imagine you're in that situation. It is super scary. So you've got fires, you've got people throwing stones, and so this is not a normal protest. This is definitely a bit of a riot. And so you can understand why we're very concerned about the folks that are in the embassy. Now, let's back up and how did this get to where it is today? And that's the important context. So first part of this was the Trump administration broke the deal that we had with Iran and all of the other major powers in the world. So the major powers did not agree with us, they agreed with Iran. Okay, so that's very important context. We're the ones who broke the deal, and for no apparent reason other than the fact that Obama signed it and we'd like to start another war in the Middle East. So then Iran starts to retaliate in different ways. Now, lately, I'm gonna fast forward to what started this particular uprising, if you will. So Iran-backed groups, now I'm gonna get into the details of that because that's important too, according to us, attacked some of our bases, including one in Kirkuk, and a defense contractor, an American defense contractor was killed and 4 US troops were injured. Now, I don't want any percentage chance of a war there, but at the same time, I actually do think you need a response for that. But it's really, really important that that response be commensurate with what we suffered, okay? Why is it important? Because we're weak-kneed liberals? No, it's really important that it be proportional because otherwise things are gonna spin out of control like they are now. And more of our troops and our contractors and our embassy personnel are going to be in danger. Now that's exactly what's happening, and I think it's only going to get worse. So what did we do in retaliation that was not proportional? We launched massive missile strikes, killing 25 and injuring 51. Now here's another part of the problem. It turns out some are reporting, again, fog of war here, but some media outlets are reporting that Iraqi police and military were among the killed. Now, the Iraqi government obviously is not going to like that. In fact, the Iraqi prime minister, while saying, yeah, we'll protect the embassy, first of all, in the beginning, it doesn't look like they had a security perimeter, so I'm not sure they did protect the embassy, but also said that the people who were killed, all of the people who were killed by American airstrikes were, quote, martyrs. So now, not only have we gone after Iran in our minds, but we've significantly pissed off the Iraqi government, which is supposed to be our allies. Now, the very important part is something that Anna alluded to. The group that we bombed actually is recognized by the Iraqi government. And back in 2014 was formed to fight ISIS. Well, that's a good thing, right? And it should be, on our side in a sense, right? In 2016, 2 years later, the Iraqi government recognized it as a private, private's not quite the right word, but an independent military unit, but that reports to the Iraqi government, not to the Iranian government, to the Iraqi government. So technically, legally, and literally, we attacked the Iraqi government on Sunday. So it was not proportional, and it was potentially directed at not a great target. They might or might not have been the people who attacked us. So the Pentagon and State Department say they were. They don't have a great history of telling the truth, but even if that were the case, that is why you have to be extraordinarily careful about how you strike back, because you're targeting a group tied to the Iraqi government, a government that has to protect your embassy with 16,000 people inside of it. So that's why it was a terrible idea. Why did Trump do it? He said, we needed a very strong response. Oh God, this is why you need a smart person in charge and not an idiot.
Well, I have some of his reaction in just a minute, but I actually want to respond to what you said, because you argue, well, there needs to be a response. If there is a US contractor who is killed as a result of a militia group, well, then there needs to be appropriate action taken. But here's the thing, why are we in Iraq right now? Right? The Iraqi people don't want us there. The Iraqi government increasingly doesn't want us there. They want us out. And the idea, look, this isn't something that happened on US soil. This is something that happened in a sovereign country, right?
Yeah.
And so people want us out, but we're still there.
So those two things are separate though, Anna.
I know they're separate.
No, so if you're asking me, would I take out the 5,000 troops from Iraq? Yeah, yesterday. Not literally yesterday, because I don't want to do something abrupt like Trump did in northern Syria, but a careful, deliberate withdrawal, because all we have is those 5,000 troops sitting there as a sitting duck. For what reason? To instigate a war in Iran? Well, I don't want a war in Iran. And by the way, it's not just us. Republican voters don't want a war with Iran. Overwhelming majority of Americans don't want a war with Iran. So the only purpose of those 5,000 soldiers there, and ISIS, Trump says, is defeated. So we don't need them for ISIS. The Iraqi government doesn't really want them there. And so they're sitting there waiting to get killed so we can start a bigger conflict in the Middle East. So I totally agree on removing the troops.
Right.
And by the way, a large chunk of that embassy staff, it doesn't need to be that gigantic.
Yeah, exactly, 16,000 people, that's not a joke. And look, all I'm saying is, think of the frustration of the Iraqi people and the Iraqi government, the way that you would feel if someone just broke into your house and refused to leave, right? So if you retaliate against the person who refuses to leave, well, that's on the person who refuses to leave. And I'm not saying I'm not saying the contractors deserved it. I'm saying we never think about the consequences of this war machine, right? And by the way, US soldiers die all the time. And there isn't this insane outrage in the State Department, because who cares? They're just our soldiers. We put them in all these unnecessary wars all the time, but there was a US contractor that got killed, right? So we need to have a disproportionate response and do these airstrikes, which I believe purposely continues to fuel these wars abroad.
So look, it's only gonna get worse. So whether it's contractors or US military personnel, why are they getting killed? Because they're there.
Exactly.
And whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan, bring them home, bring them home. They're sitting ducks, and there's no point other than to provoke more wars to get more of our troops killed. So bring our guys home. Okay, now last thing, guys, as part of this is, at least from my perspective, I know we got Trump's response too, but is what's next? Well, here we go. We might have opened up a Pandora's box, and there's no good way to get out of this. So Iraqi President Barham Salih has called the US actions harmful to Iraq and unacceptable. And guess who's back? Muqtada al-Sadr. So he had won recent elections. There was some sort of deal made so that he wouldn't be prime minister, but he is a very powerful force within Iraq, and he is now leading a campaign to expel US forces by, quote, legal and political means. The last time he tried to expel US forces, he did it by military means and killed tons of our troops. So Muqtada al-Sadr and his brigade in the Iraq war was an unbelievable menace to us. And now he's back saying, hey, listen, man, I won the elections. You want a democracy? You got a democracy. And now I'm telling you, you better get the hell out. Otherwise, things are gonna get really ugly. And Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani, who, Americans are scared by the title Grand Ayatollah in any Muslim name. The Ayatollah is usually in Iraq, not in Iran, but in Iraq, a moderating force. And Grand Ayatollah just basically means like Cardinal, Callahan, and for you to begin to understand it. So anyway, Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani says that the US action was, quote, sinful and without justification. So he's less harsh than the others, again, because he's a little bit of a moderating force in that country. But when you piss him off, he's like basically the Pope of Iraq. So then everybody's mad. And now we've got all of Iraq, forget Iran, we've got all of Iraq mad at us. So what the hell are we doing there?
Exactly.
There's no good way out of this other than get our troops out of there and get as much of our embassy staff out as possible, because this is totally counterproductive.
So I want to read a member comment, and this comes from Mayo Pete's 39th billionaire donor. That's the member's handle. I'd venture to say that invading Iraq was in the first place disproportionate to anything they, as a nation state, have done to the United States. So our members, for the most part, based on this comment, seem to understand and agree that we have no reason to be in that country at this point. If the government doesn't want us there, we should leave. We're not assisting them. We're just there fueling the war machine.
Remember what the original excuse was? There was a couple of them, but one of them was, and Bush declared this when he started the war, the liberation of Iraq has begun, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, great, they're liberated. And now they're telling us to get the hell out. Okay, so we should listen to that because there's supposed to be a free democracy that we were so proud to set up. Is it real or is it not real? So let's make up our minds. But one more thing, of course, so we read members' comments every once in a while throughout the show, tyt.com/join to become a member, be part of the show. But our members are so much smarter than the rest of the media, because the media says, oh my God, we got tricked in the Iraq war, and they wring their hands. But do they ever learn any lessons? No, they don't learn any lessons. So right now, they're have like untold praise over and over again for who? Joe Biden, who voted for what? The Iraq war. I mean, disproportionate. I mean, Iraq didn't do anything to us. Iraq did not attack us on 9/11. It was Al-Qaeda. Iraq hated Al-Qaeda. So, I mean, if you're not smart and you don't know anything, okay, that's one thing,
Didn't have weapons of mass destruction.
And they didn't have any of that. No, we picked them because they have oil. But the media will never, ever, ever admit that, even though it's the most obvious thing in the world. So, and by the way, Joe Biden doesn't admit that. So what are we in the middle of? This is not ancient history. The attacks are happening right now in Iraq, and we have a presidential candidate leading the Democratic field who was in favor of the Iraq war and has learned no lessons whatsoever. So whether it's Trump or Biden, we might still be in the same exact mess in this situation.
So now let's get to some of the reaction, both from the Iranian-backed militia group and also from Donald Trump. So the Iranian-backed militia group has released a statement, and this is a statement from a spokesman for, again, Kataib Hezbollah. And he says the American administration should understand the following. The first step was to protest near the American embassy. We are waiting for their reactions to determine the second step. He continues to say, first, close the doors of the evil embassy, which we consider a spy building and an operations room to administer and sabotage Iraq's well-being. We also call on the US to withdraw their military forces, which are in Iraq illegally. This protest was a stand against US political dominance. Well, Trump has decided to continue threatening the militia group further. And so I want to give you a few of his tweets. In one of them, he writes, Iran killed an American contractor, wounding many. We strongly responded and always will. Now Iran is orchestrating an attack on the US embassy in Iraq. They will be held fully responsible. In addition, we expect Iraq to use its forces to protect the embassy and so notified. Okay, so I just want to note, look, Donald Trump made the disastrous decision to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal, right? He's the one who started these provocations. That is the root of the issue here. And so he can't argue that, oh, the Iranians are the bad guys and look at what they're doing and retaliating in all these different ways. Why are they retaliating? Because of your actions. His actions escalated the situation in the Middle East. And so Cenk is absolutely right. That led to Iran, funding some of these militia groups. It also led to them no longer complying with the Iran nuclear deal because the US pulled out and slapped Iran with a bunch of insane sanctions that has completely destroyed their economy and made the people of Iran suffer.
So our government is saying some things that might or might not be true and some things that are definitely not true. So they say, well, this militia group is tied to Iran and gets some of its funding from Iran. Now, they've provided no public evidence of that, but it's possible that that's true. And so, I have no reason to doubt that other than the fact that our government often lies when it comes to these issues.
And our media.
Right, but when they say Iran did this, as if Iran is the only factor here, that is obviously not true. So again, this militia group is tied to the Iraqi government legally, not to the Iranian government. In 2016, Iraq passed a law. Iraq is supposed to be our allies, okay? They passed a law saying that this militia group reports to the Iraqi prime minister. So even if it's true that they get some funding from the Iranian government, you would say, okay, some ties to Iran, but also massive ties to the Iraqi government. We obliterated one of their camps, killed 25 people, wounded 51. So the Iraqi government is super pissed at us, understandably so, and we go, oh yeah, Iran did it. No, not exactly. And so I hope, the press does report it in the details of the story, but the big headlines are US versus Iran, and that's not really that accurate.
Exactly. So let me give you some more reaction from Trump. So in response to the protesters at the US Embassy, Trump is bragging that his reaction is the quote, anti-Benghazi. In a tweet, all he wrote was, the anti-Benghazi, with an exclamation mark.
No, okay, just for a second there, now not having to do with this, the particulars of the story. What kind of a lunatic president do we have? The anti-Benghazi, that's it, in the tweet. What the hell is that?
So he's trying to make himself out to be a hero in this case, and he's trying to juxtapose his response or his threatened response to the protesters with how the Obama administration responded to Benghazi.
Petulant child, speaking complete sentences. You're the president of the United States and you might be in the middle of starting a disastrous war. Don't just scream into the ether and oh yeah, anti-Benghazi. What kind of a lunatic does that? Okay. Can you spell out what the hell you're talking about? We might start a war based on your stupid tweets.
And in a different tweet, he writes, Iran will be held fully responsible for lost lives or damage incurred at any of our facilities. They will pay a very big price. This is not a warning, it is a threat. Happy New Year.
It's not a warning, it's a threat. Happy New Year, everybody. Okay, the reason why I've warned 1,000 times over that it's a terrible idea to have an unintelligent person in charge is because they don't understand the consequences of their actions, especially a child like Donald Trump, who has an IQ of 70 or lower. So when he goes, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a strong response, then you'll see mommy, right? Okay, but then Iran is going to have a response and then it's gonna spiral. And if they kill our troops, then you're gonna spiral it worse. And then, we're in the middle of a war and you claimed you didn't want a disastrous Middle East war. If you thought the Iraq war was bad and Trump says, oh, I warned against the Iraq war, I had strong warnings. Now that wasn't true, but he has said that 1,000,000 times. Well, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. So you're gonna get us into a war 4 times the size of the Iraq war, which cost us a couple of $1 trillion and untold lives, thousands upon thousands of American lives, let alone the nearly 1,000,000 dead Iraqi citizens. That's because you don't understand the consequences of your actions. This buffoon cannot leave the Oval Office quickly enough.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to lighten things up with a different State Department story. And it involves an investigation into who liked one of Chelsea Clinton's tweets back in 2017.
Oh no, that is very serious.
We'll be right back.
we got good news for you. We're hiring a journalist to cover climate change and money in politics' effect on it in specific. So we're almost there. We just need to get to $200,000. If we can do that by the end of the year, that would be amazing. TYT.com/climate. I love this because every time there's a vote, we're gonna see who donated to which politicians, how are they voting, and we're gonna hold them accountable. And we're gonna get it to the rest of the press, and we're gonna get it all over social media. Because it isn't that not enough people agree with us. 3/4 of the country believes climate change is real and we have to do something about it. The problem is the politicians that take money from fossil fuel companies. And that's what we're gonna expose with your help. So TYT.com/climate for that.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
It's winter, and it's cold this time of year, isn't it? Well, it might feel chilly, and the wind might bite at your nose. Maybe you want to snuggle up with a hot chocolate, or wrap up warm and wear your biggest coat. But in the grand scheme of things, our earth is too hot, and it's getting even hotter. Our seasons are getting confused. Lots of birds are nesting earlier, and spring flowers are coming out too soon. This is what climate change looks like. It's affecting so many of the things we love, both here in our own backyards and around the world. But we have hope, because we know that together we can protect them if we act now and everyone does their bit. So this Christmas, give a gift of love and show the world you care.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation. And it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
All right, back on the Young Turks. A couple of member comments for you guys. I bathe in a very stable genius's tears, writes, and since TYT is turning 18, does that mean it's through with this rebellious phase? No, just getting started, brother. Just getting started. Shannon M writes in, I'm going to put on Postmates and pace champagne with Anna after this.
Oh, yes.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, I like it a lot. Eclectic Miscellaneous says it's depressing that in 2019, TYT is one of the only outlets consistently pointing out that we didn't have any justification whatsoever for going into Iraq in the first place. Yet here it is 16 years later and we're still there. Come on, mainstream media, do your damn job for once.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, not gonna happen. Okay, okay.
A few announcements. First off, my favorite announcement of the day. If you missed out on that wonderful Shop TYT sale where you got a fat discount on everything, including those hoodies, it's okay, today's your lucky day. In fact, we're doing a sale of 25% off site-wide. Right, so whether it's the TYT hoodie that I absolutely love with the pocket within a pocket, or a shirt that you really like, all you need to do is go to shoptyt.com and use the promo code New Year to get 25% off your order.
Guys, there aren't gonna be discounts for a while, so this is the time to panic, okay?
And also, one of my favorite shows on the network, Happy Half Hour, is going to stream on Friday, January 3rd. Members can live stream a new episode of Happy Half Hour every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Postgame will air right after at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific. Sign up to become a member by going to tyt.com/join. Then you can catch the shows whenever you want. That's how I watch the shows. I keep an eye on you guys while I'm away.
No, I know. Every once in a while, Anna will text me in the middle of the show. You know what you're getting wrong? Okay, well, I love that. So,
yeah.
And the app's a great way to watch wherever you are. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right, so let's do a little bit of fun before we get back to the serious stuff. So, the Daily Beast is reporting that the State Department actually launched a very serious investigation back in 2017 into who liked Chelsea Clinton's tweet. Because that is what our State Department should waste its time on. So it has nothing to do with the whistleblower, Ukraine. Again, this is back in 2017. And Rex Tillerson's State Department, I mean, it feels like a long time ago, launched a furious probe to find out who dared to like Chelsea Clinton's tweet. This is after Donald Trump was criticized for sending Ivanka Trump to the G20 summit. And if you can remember, that G20 summit produced this wonderful video of world leaders ignoring Ivanka Trump while she tried to be a relevant part of the conversation. Take a look.
Yes, but this is about social justice. And if
it's all, yeah. As soon as you start talking about the economic aspect of it, though, a lot of people start listening who wouldn't otherwise listen.
And the same with the defense side of it. In terms of the whole sort of business. It's been very male dominated. So.
That video, it's like, it's both fun to watch, but also super embarrassing because she represents us at the summit.
Oh, no, that was one of the most wonderfully awkward videos of all time. And I'm just wondering, if I become president, should I send Pro or Joy to one of these events? I think Joy would be better received than Ivanka would.
You should send Haas, I'm sure it'll go over well.
Could you imagine?
No, well, I actually can, and I don't want to. But anyway, let's move on to what happened afterwards. So as I mentioned, Donald Trump got a lot of pushback for sending Ivanka Trump there. And so he responded to the pushback in a tweet on July 10th, 2017. And it said, if Chelsea Clinton were asked to hold the seat for her mother, as her mother gave our country away, the fake news would say Chelsea for Prez. And then Chelsea Clinton fired back and said, good morning, Mr. President. It would never have occurred to my mother or my father to ask me, were you giving our country away? Hoping not. And so it turns out that someone liked that tweet. To give you some specifics, it was the account for the US mission to the European Union. Someone for that account liked her tweet, and I don't know who decided to launch this investigation into who liked the tweet, but the investigation was launched.
Yeah, by the way, remember at the time, Rex Tillerson is the Secretary of State and it's his office launching it. So later, Rex Tillerson would infamously walk out of a meeting and declare that Donald Trump was an effing moron. But at the time, Tillerson, full loyalist to Donald Trump, go, oh my God, if Chelsea Clinton has besmirched the reputation of our dear president online, we must counterattack, and found out this nefarious spy who might like Chelsea Clinton within our mission at the European Union. This is what we're wasting taxpayer money on.
No, but like, think about how Donald Trump specifically, but the Trump administration, like they're constantly whining about wasted resources into, the impeachment investigation, the Russia investigation, where there is actual criminality. In this case, it's all about hurt feelings and bruised egos, right? So what did the investigation look like? At least 10 people were interviewed about whether they, as administrators of the account, had mistakenly or deliberately pressed the like button. All of them denied any wrongdoing. One individual familiar with the exchanges said the Secretary of State's top managers in Washington wanted blood and called Brussels numerous times demanding the name of the culprit.
Bunch of children. No, but like I'm greatly amused by this scenario. They put on the big spotlights, you're under the lights and you're sweating and they're like, did you or did you not press that like button? Really? This is the conversation we're having. So the Russian investigation was actually not about Trump. Mueller was charged with finding out whether the Russians interfered in a presidential election that the United States was having. He concluded that they did. Trump thought, oh, that's a waste of money. Who cares if another country's interfering in our presidential elections? Somebody like Chelsea Clinton's tweet, oh my God, spend as much money as you need to do, okay? Right. We gotta get this person who pressed the like button on Twitter.
So look, to be fair to Trump, we don't know if he's the one who demanded the investigation. We don't even know if he was aware of it, right? But we do know he's a very thin-skinned person. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But nonetheless, the investigation happened and it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, look, so now, to be doubly fair to Donald Trump, and I'm gonna tell you that there is some logic in it. What? Why? Okay. Now, does it make sense to waste taxpayer money? Of course not. And by the way, if you were concerned about the deep state liking Chelsea Clinton's tweets, maybe you do one call. Hey guys, do you know who pressed the like button? What the hell, don't do that, right? Because that's against the president and you're working for the president, don't do that. I think that's fair, okay? Doing a giant investigation where you're interrogating 10 different staffers on what they did on Twitter is preposterous. But now, so why is it logical? Because you know what it does? It scares the hell out of everybody and sends a message. If you ever cross the president in even the smallest way, we will come for you and try to end your career.
Sounds like a great democracy to live in.
Yeah, well, but that's who Donald Trump is. And so that's why he says about North Korea, oh no, Kim Jong-un is great. When he says something, everybody stands up to attention. I wish it was like that here. Well, if you know why they stand up to attention? Because if they don't, they'll be executed. Kim Jong-un once executed one of his uncles, according to the press, with not a howitzer. I think they fired a missile at him and blew him to smithereens. Okay, that's why they stand to attention. So Trump was like, well, I mean, if anyone did the slightest offense at me, oh, we can't use missiles. All right, but do an investigation to try to ruin their lives, okay? And it scared everyone into compliance. And if you're looking to do a fascist takeover of the government, and you don't want people to follow the rule of law, you just want them to follow your orders and your orders unquestioningly, that's what you would do. You would intimidate everybody into compliance. And so they started that right in the beginning, as you could tell here, and have been doing it ever since. And what do we have, by the way? Not just compliance within the Trump administration, but the entire Republican Party all bowing their heads and saying, nope, truth doesn't matter, logic doesn't matter. We will defend the president because we do not want to be obliterated like Justin Amash or the person who pressed the like button or Kim Jong-un's uncle.
All right, so let's move on to Democratic primary related news because this one is a doozy. Former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg was at a campaign stop and he was asked an uncomfortable question about the Central Park Five. What was even more uncomfortable than the question was the way he handled it. Take a look.
Talking about race, and a subject that's come up a lot is the Central Park Five. And when you were mayor of New York, you defended the city and the police department's handling of this Central Park Five case. You argued that they both acted in good faith. Do you still believe that today? And do you think that the city...
I really have no idea. I've read in the paper. I've been away from government for a long time. So apparently the courts have ruled that they did not commit a crime, and that's the final word, and we just have to accept that. But it isn't a question of what anybody believes.
At the time, you did not believe that, and so I'm saying now, have you changed your stance on that?
I think there was an awful lot of evidence presented at that time that they were involved. There's been questions since then about the quality of that evidence. And so I've been away from it for so long. I just really can't respond because I just don't remember. But there's been plenty written about it, and I'd suggest you go and read some of that.
So before we get to the subsequent response from Bloomberg's campaign, and he is running in the Democratic primary, I do want to just note that he mentions the fact that he has been away from government for a long time as an excuse for not having a solid opinion on how that case was handled. But DNA evidence exonerated the Central Park Five, okay? They were wrongfully convicted and they lost years of their lives serving time in prison for a crime they did not commit. I don't work in government and I know that. And he is running for president of the United States, he should know that. The fact of the matter is the way he handled that question made it abundantly clear that the lives of those individuals don't matter to him. He doesn't think about it, he doesn't stay awake at night thinking about how they lost years of their lives serving time in prison for a crime they didn't commit. It doesn't matter to him because they're just throwaways of society to him. That's it. And he has no business even thinking that he should serve as president of the United States, period.
So funny enough, I actually think you're being too kind to him. So he knows.
Oh, I'm into this response. Go for it.
Yeah. So look, let me give you details on why he knows. So the chain of events is this: the Central Park Five are arrested for the rape of this and murder of this poor woman, and so at the time.
I don't think she was murdered.
Oh, sorry.
She was raped and she was beaten.
Yeah, my bad, guys. She was severely beaten, and the reason I made that mistake for a second, because I was just about to tell you, is that Donald Trump then took out an ad in the New York Times saying that they should all be executed, okay? So there it is, bring back the death penalty, bring back our police. Trump wrote back decades before he ever ran for office. But he was a vengeful prick back then and he is today. And he was wrong back then and he is today. So those guys got arrested. They used duress to get false confessions out of them. Now, how do we know it's false? Because in 2002, we caught the real guy, Mateus Reyes. He's a convicted murderer and serial rapist. He confessed to the crime and his DNA matched the DNA on the crime scene. Over 100%, he definitely did it. It was not the Central Park Five. So then the Central Park Five, having spent years upon years in jail, then sue the city of New York. Makes sense. That's what anybody would do. It's a very logical thing to do, okay? And so Mike Bloomberg at that point is now the mayor. And so Bloomberg was mayor from 2002 to 2013. He fought it all the way.
Yes.
All the way, spent untold amount of money fighting the case, saying, no, we are not gonna give any justice or money to the Central Park Five. So, hey, no, hold on, no. So Mike, if I can call you that, and I don't give a damn that you're a billionaire, so I can and will call you that. I'm sure everybody else around you kisses your ass because of your money, okay? You know who those people are. You're the one that spent all that money, taxpayer money, trying to make sure they never got justice. So don't pretend that you don't know them. You're the racist prick who didn't want to give them any money in the first place. Yep. Why? Oh, no, my beloved cops. They could do no wrong. Stop and frisk all Latinos and blacks, okay? Later, when I'm running for president, pretending to be a Democrat, I'll apologize for it. Oh, Central Park Five and how I tried to ruin their lives? I'll pretend I don't even know who they are. Did you see what he said to the reporter then? I suggest you read up on that. No, I suggest you read up on that, Mike, because you're the one who did it. You're the one who denied them justice. You know when they finally got it? After Bloomberg left office, Bill de Blasio settled the case.
Right.
Because Bloomberg was wrong. He was 100% wrong and he knows it.
So I just wanted to, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I agree with everything you're saying. I just wanted to provide some detail to give you a sense of how aggressively Bloomberg fought against that civil rights suit. So the Bloomberg administration spent nearly $6 million fighting that case over a decade, arguing that the authorities at the time had good cause and acted in good faith.
Yeah,
so
good faith.
$6 million over the course of a decade. And so he knows, you're right, he knows the details. And you're right in saying that I wasn't aggressive enough, but that's because I didn't get to all the details yet.
Okay, so I hear you. But look, guys, even if you were to take the hypothesis that Anna started with, that then you would have to agree that Bloomberg's a bumbling fool. Oh, but we spent $6 million of taxpayer money trying to help racists? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's a national case that everybody knows about? But I'm the mayor of New York and I'm the one who spent the money and I don't know anything about it. Okay, then you obviously shouldn't be the manager of a goddamn thing, right? So you know how to make money off of Wall Street, I got that part. Okay, but do you know how to run a government? You just told me you don't. that you're a bumbling idiot that didn't have any idea what was happening when you were mayor of New York. Oh, golly gee, did stop and frisk target 94% Latinos and blacks? I guess it did. I know. What do I know? I'm an idiot. Oh, did I target the Central Park Five just like Donald Trump? Oh, I guess I didn't know that. You're a liar. You did know that. And listen to what he said there. He said, you saw it in the clip. So apparently the courts have ruled that they did not commit a crime. Apparently, we knew that back in 2002. You knew that back in 2002. Mike Bloomberg is 100% lying about this. By the way, you wanna know something else? This guy spent $120 million in TV ads over the last 3 weeks, right? He's now in 5th place. He skipped he jumped frog like 20 candidates. He's in 5th place because you could just deceive people. You could just buy ad after ad pretending to be a Democrat and oh yeah, oh don't you see? I care a lot about African Americans. I have a couple of people standing behind me. My record is abysmal, but it doesn't matter because I'm just gonna buy a whole bunch of ads. I'm gonna pay off the media. They're gonna be great to me, except that one reporter who's awesome. Thank you for asking that question. Okay. And since I'm paying money into all those media organizations, they're gonna keep writing about Bloomberg. That'll give me more free media. And all of a sudden, I'm a little bit in the ball game, but my record, oh golly gee, I'd never know about my record. So look, guys, we're not biased. So when Bloomberg fights against the rampant, out of control guns we have in this country, and he fights for gun control, I agree and support him. When he fights to do something about climate change, that's great. But he also has a terrible record. He made all of his money off of Wall Street. There isn't anything he wouldn't do for Wall Street. He has kissed their ass a million times over. If he's president, Wall Street's in charge, 100%. And his record on minorities is abysmal, and he knows it. So this trying to play a bumbling fool here as he's sitting on $54 billion is the most disingenuous thing I've ever seen.
When we come back from the break, Neera Tanden and David Sirota, who is Bernie Sanders' speechwriter, go at it on Twitter. And I just love it. You don't want to miss this story, and more when we return.
Cenk Ugranik is pairing with you guys, ready for a rock and roll show.
We've never played instruments before, but we're gonna try for the first time right now.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Jesus would come back and be like, no, I'm done with all the banks. And he said, now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy, they're coming to get me. It's not about fighting amongst each other. It's about making sure we correct the political system so our government works for us and our representatives actually represent us. And unfortunately, not a lot of the rest of the media even understands that concept, but we do here.
You can't be pro-life and pro the death penalty.
They're afraid to do it because they're stuck in this, this lie that Republicans are great with money and the economy, and then they don't spend all your money and take it from you. It's exactly what they do. Just say it.
Okay, we're about to have some fun on the show. Strap on. That's not a thing. She's gonna fall one of these days. One of these days she's gonna fall.
Okay. All right, we gotta do the story. This country is not run by the people for the people. It's run by corporations, it's run by weapons manufacturers, it's run by private military contractors.
We've been telling you that people care about policy, and people on TV, they're like, no, everybody just cares about gloss and shine and whether you're rolling up your sleeves well. But what's more impressive is policy, and that you should make equal note of that, and you most certainly have not.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation. And it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
But it was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut-up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Gerd writes in, Happy New Year 2020 from Germany. In Germany, it's already the year 2020. All right, well, sehr gut. I'm glad you mach schnell into the new year.
What does mach schnell mean again?
Like, make it fast. And they made it fast into the new year before we did. You know, that's the little bit of ein bisschen Deutsch I have. Look at that. I can say a little bit in many languages. Speaking of different places, on YouTube Super Chat, Perth Theron writes in, Happy New Year, love from Sweden. Oh, love you guys, watching all over the world. Peter Hamby writes in, progressive democracy is still our resolution, even in 2020. Together, let's push for our voices to deafen the money and corruption out of politics for good. Here on that, Peter. All these folks are using YouTube Super Chat, and we appreciate it. Netta Kin says, super last thing, guys. Happy New Year and a new decade to TYT fam. You're the only network I watch whose reporting is critical, logical, and honest, which is why I started to pay attention to politics in 2016. Please keep this up for the next decade. Thank you, guys. And then last one is, funny enough, back to the member section, a person with the handle, super last thing, and that person writes in, thank you, Cenk. While I was watching the Bloomberg video, I was yelling at the screen, you liar, you fought against the settlement the entire time, you know. That's right, I do the yelling for you. That's my main job. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, so tyt.com/climate, okay? We're trying to raise money to get a climate reporter, but very specifically to report on the money, the fossil fuel industry giving money to Republicans and Democrats. And those folks, how did they vote? When did they get the money? How much money did they get? Who did they get it from? How did they vote? Are they for the Green New Deal, against the Green New Deal? Because the money is everything. Remember, 3/4 of Americans believe that climate change is real and we should take action on it. It isn't a matter of convincing people, it's a matter of actually convincing the legislators. And the way that you do that is put public pressure on them with good reporting. So we're almost at the $200,000. In fact, can I see the thermometer? Look at that, nice. Wonderful, 177.5. We started raising the money just a couple of days ago, and we were at around 160. Now we're at 177. Let's please try to finish it up by the end of the year and get 200,000 so we can get busy hiring folks. tyt.com/climate. Thank you, guys.
All right, let's get to some more news. Neera Tanden, the head of the neoliberal think tank, Center for American Progress, has found herself in a Twitter feud with Bernie Sanders' speechwriter, David Sirota. Now, David Sirota was just minding his own business, just providing some commentary on Twitter in regard to Joe Biden and how he recently said that he wouldn't be against choosing a Republican as his VP pick. And so in his tweet, he wrote, Dear fellow Democrats, Joe Biden has been repeatedly trying to tell us something. When someone tries this hard to make clear exactly who they are and what their values are, we should listen. And then he provides all those headlines that indicate that Joe Biden is Republican-like, to say the least.
And the headlines are all things that Joe Biden actually said about how he looks forward to working with the Republicans, believe the Republicans are going to be reasonable, and of course recently saying that he would even consider picking a Republican as his vice president. And so now, to be fair, Sorota's not really minding his own business. He's working for Bernie Sanders, and he's making the case against Joe Biden. To be fair to Sirota, Joe Biden has made it exceedingly simple.
Yeah, but when I say minding his own business, he's not like acting as some Twitter troll who's trying to provoke Neera Tanden, right?
Yeah. No, he didn't start a fight with her. He's just making a point for his candidate. And by the way, I'll give you guys, a note here to make sure that everybody knows. David Sirota used to be a contributor on TYT. Okay, so, but the reason he was is because he's really progressive. We're home of progressives. It's not surprising that he was here. It's not surprising that he works for Bernie Sanders. But yes, he's putting out a message. Not only for his candidate, but one that is actually very, very true, backed up by all of those mainstream media headlines. How are you gonna argue with it? It is the mainstream media, and even they had to acknowledge that's true. Joe Biden loves Republicans.
So in response, Neera Tanden tweets, "Fellow what?" Now remember, David Sirota's tweet starts with fellow Democrats, and then she follows that tweet with, "Glad that political party is important now." And she's trying to make a point about how Bernie Sanders is an independent senator in the state of Vermont. And this is an old, tired line that we keep hearing from establishment corporatist Democrats like Neera Tanden, who don't actually represent Democratic voters, but they certainly do represent private interests, special interests, the corporate world in America. Doesn't care at all about ensuring that American voters have the proper health care or the proper protections against corporatism here in the United States. But anyway, let's just stop for a second and acknowledge the fact that Neera Tanden in her response to David Sirota is defending Joe Biden, who says that he is open to choosing a Republican as his VP.
Yeah.
Like they're much more friendly to Republicans as opposed to progressives. Let's just keep it real about that.
So this idea that Bernie Sanders is not a real Democrat because he's independent, that is an incredibly dumb point. It's not to say that Neera Tanden is unintelligent because that's not the case at all. She's very smart. So it makes it more curious as to why she would make a point that is obviously misleading. So why do I call it a dumb point? Guys, everybody knows Bernie Sanders is challenging the Democratic Party from the left. So he's more progressive, and the Democratic Party is supposed to be the progressive party. So, and certainly the more progressive party. No one disputes that. In fact, they attack Bernie Sanders 24/7 for being too far left and too progressive, right? And what Paul Wellstone used to say is he represents the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And not only that, Bernie Sanders is actually in Senate leadership. People forget that. But he's part of Senate leadership. Chuck Schumer picked him for the Democrats. Not only does he caucus with the Democrats, he's part of the leadership for the Democrats, okay? So the idea that he's not Democratic enough, what it says is, if it's not stupid, then there's only one defense of it, which is that in the view of people like Neera Tanden, the Democratic Party is not the party that is on the left. It is the party of corporations. And so Bernie Sanders is a threat to the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party's job is to sell out the corporations. And so since Bernie's not doing that, they're like, he's not a real Democrat. Real Democrats would take corporate money and serve corporate interests. And that is the only intelligible reason why you would make the argument that Bernie is not Democratic enough. But even if you were to say, Cenk, no, we don't care about left, and it's not that we're pro-corporate, we just care about the title, the label. We just love the word Democrat, and we don't really care about any policies, and you'd have to confess that. We don't care about any principles, we just care about the title. Well, if you do, presumably you're against the Republican Party that has the opposite title.
Right.
Okay, so when a leading Democratic candidate says, I might pick a Republican as a VP, well, you should be hair on fire angry. Neera Tanden should be livid. She can't stand people who aren't Democrats, right? Not only are they not Democrats, they're to the right wing, the Republicans are, and they're the opposite party. So, do you understand that if Biden picks a Republican as a VP, first of all, that means he definitely picked a monster. There are no non-monsters left in the Republican Party on the national level, okay, in terms of the politicians. Number two, it means Biden, who's 78 years old, would put a Republican a heartbeat away from regaining the government. The Republican Party regaining the entire government. Oh my God, it's disqualifying. That word is used too often, but it is appropriate here. To consider putting the Republicans back in charge when we elect a Democrat is insanity defined, okay? But not only that, there's also the fact that that person would gain a lot of leverage to run for president after Biden. Not only that, if there's a tie in the Senate, the vice president breaks the tie and the Republicans would win the tie.
I can't get it. No, look, with what the Democratic establishment is today, it is embarrassing to identify as a Democrat. I'm just keeping it real. That label has been tainted by the likes of Neera Tanden and the lengths that they will go to just to smear candidates, not just presidential candidates, but congressional candidates that threaten their precious establishment, threaten their precious profits and their corporatism. I mean, it is disgusting how they will bury people with smears if they challenge the establishment Democrats and corporatism in the United States. So look, I gotta be honest, after seeing just how insanely disgusting their behavior is, I hate that I'm a registered Democrat, but I have to be a registered Democrat in order to vote in the primaries for the candidate that I prefer, who happens to be Bernie Sanders. Democrat doesn't mean what it used to mean, right? It has been tainted by people like Neera Tanden. Because the fact of the matter is, when push comes to shove, she is the same. People like her are the same as the Republican Party, right? And look, they might seem marginally better when it comes to some social justice issues, but really, they pretend to care about those things in order to smear other candidates, right? They pretend to care about the identity politics. They pretend to care about women. They pretend to care about the LGBT community. They pretend to care about people of color when they can use those issues in order to smear candidates that they don't like. When push comes to shove, are they really gonna fight for those more marginalized groups of people? Of course not. When have they?
So I have a slightly different take on it. Look, we have the American flag in the background because the right wing doesn't own that. It's ours. It stands for equality, liberty, all the things that progressives fight for. Inclusion of more people into having the rights that we're supposed to have as Americans. So I can go on and on about that. And then in terms of the Democratic Party, no, the corporatists don't own the Democratic Party. And it's our job to root them out.
But
they are the corrupt.
They do. Right
no,
now they
I know.
do.
Right now they do. Wrong, as MLK said, wrong forever on the throne, truth forever on the scaffold. But that scaffold sways the future, and we're in the middle of swaying that future. And so, if we give up on it, then we're in the wilderness, and it's hopeless. And then there's two corporate parties: one that is monstrous on social issues, and the one that is acceptable on social issues, but monstrous on every other economic issue, including ones that affect our lives, like our healthcare, our well-being, not just our livelihood, but literally our lives. Okay, so I do not accept that as a reality. And right now we have a historic opportunity to elect a Democrat who is the most progressive politician of our lifetimes. So the corporatists don't own the Democratic Party. Our job, as I said on the night of Trump's victory, is to take the Democratic Party back from these corrupt people who run it. And they celebrate their corruption. They're like, progressives, they're not Democrats. Wonderful corporate people like Joe Biden and Buttigieg who conduct their campaigns from a wine cave, who kiss the ass of the donor class.
Who turn their backs on Democratic voters.
And who say that we'll work with Republicans enthusiastically to help the same donors that we have, and might pick one as VP. They're real Democrats. No, okay. No, that's why we fight. And so when we fight back, and you're right, in this case, Neera started the fight, right? And then they get all aggrieved. They're like, unity, everybody bow your heads. No, we're not bowing our heads. Bernie Sanders is gonna win. And when he wins, my guess is Neera Tanden is not gonna bow her head. She's not gonna say like, oh no, okay, the progressive wing of the party has won, now we're all progressives. No, she's gonna look to undermine him in every way imaginable, is my guess.
She's not gonna get a job in Bernie Sanders' administration.
Oh my God, that's right.
There's no financial benefit to Neera Tanden and people like Neera Tanden in a Bernie Sanders administration. That's what this really boils down to. And so, go ahead.
So look, Neera Tanden was on a short list apparently for Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. Oops. So I would have wanted her to be chief of staff because I didn't want Trump to win, okay? And I made that very, very clear. But will they return the favor if Bernie Sanders is the nominee? I don't know if a lot of these corporate Democrats, I don't think they'll vote for Trump, but maybe I'm being naive. But will they stay home? Because can they get themselves to vote for Bernie Sanders? They're like, oh, he's an actual progressive. He undermines all of our corruption. God, it drives them nuts. All right, last thing. So I asked this on social media, I'll ask it right now. So Neera Tanden, serious question. Who do you think is the better Democrat? Someone who challenges the Democratic Party from the left, or someone who says they would pick a Republican as their vice president, or considering picking a Republican as vice president? It's a serious question. And I asked it on social media, she hasn't answered it yet, but we know the answer. The answer is she'd rather have the ones supporting Republicans. And that is devastating. And it proves exactly what we've been saying all these years. They don't actually care about any of the policies or the principles. All they care about is the money, the money, the money.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back.
People work hard for what they have, and if you want more, you gotta do it yourself.
Stock stories bring headlines to life in an instant, whether you work on Wall Street or in Wichita. Stock report cards and professional analyst buy and sell ratings help gut check your thought process. Buy stock, take profits, and manage risk. And the Idea Feed is your daily one-stop investment shop with videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes, because you need ideas, not lectures. And live in-app chat from when you want to talk to someone, but you don't actually want to talk.
So what'd you think?
With unlimited commission-free stock trades and great ideas from real traders. Visit doe.com/TYT.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show.
We'll see. We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy.
Cenk is oddly, scarily competitive.
Oh, it's insane. I play basketball against him. It's just like, how are you good at this?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Idarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Guns, baby.
You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
The Hour of Fire is brought to you by Brooke, and Brooke.
Yes, Brooke's got it.
Okay.
Take it.
All
you
right.
guys know I really like compliments.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
Right, so that's it. We will settle it.
I want to see this.
Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't. Scandal at TYT.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show. That's great. Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips. All right, back on the Young Turks. Cray Cray Souffle writes in, just mentioning of a Republican as a possible running mate should make anyone supporting Joe Biden running at light speed for the exits. And I am curious to see if it's gonna affect his polling numbers, because the Neera Tanya's of the world don't care at all. They're like, yeah, so what? Yeah, we were looking to pass the same bills anyway. But Democratic voters genuinely don't like Republican politicians. So they're not in on the scam. So my guess is, remember the propaganda is, you gotta be a Democrat, you gotta be a Democrat, right? So when Joe Biden says maybe Republicans, the propaganda there might counteract their purpose. Do you see what I'm saying? And might hurt Biden in the polls, we'll see. No poll's been done since he said that. Sarah Beth says, well, Joe's a Republican pretty much. Establishment Dems are probably closer to Republicans than progressives. That's a good question. Yeah.
But they are, not probably, they are. Let's stop kidding ourselves. Like, let's just acknowledge reality right now. That's what I'm saying. Like, Democrat is just a label, but what it stands for today versus what it used to stand for decades ago, two completely different things. So let's acknowledge that, because if we keep pretending as though Democrats are somehow better than the Republican Party on like the fundamentals of what they support and what they push for, then we can't even begin the fight.
Yeah.
We start from a place of ignorance, really.
Yeah. If anything, I think this fight within the Democratic Party is going to speed up at warp speed. Anyway, Steve Mnuchin's canceled credit cards writes in, Cenk on point here, establishment devs serve corporate interests first and then the scraps go to the constituency. Of that, there's almost no argument among people who know the facts. Captain Cornball writes in, Happy New Year from the UK, hoping that this is better all around decade ahead. Much love to all. Thank you, we appreciate it. Divazu writes in YouTube super chat, Happy New Year TYT from Queensland, Australia. I love how many people, international viewers, use YouTube Super Chat. It helps the show, and it's great to hear from you guys. Dina on Twitter says, love watching TYT live on New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's, love you guys. Proud TYT member and YouTube member, hashtag double support.
Damn.
I love that. So being a member on the website is tyt.com/join. You get all the benefits of membership. tyt.com/join. And on YouTube, it's that little kind of blue button underneath the videos that says join. And there's different layers. You can just do $1.99 just to support, and you get a couple of advantages with that. $4.99 gets you the post games and a lot of our videos, and $9.99 gets you all of our videos, and you show support. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. And we couldn't do it without you guys. All right.
So there was an opinion piece written over at Jezebel that caught my attention. The writer is Ashley Reese, and I want to preface this by saying she's not a bad guy, she's a good guy, okay? She seems to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, and she wants to, at least the feel that I get, encourage Bernie Sanders supporters to avoid provoking some of the centrist Democrats who have been smearing him and his supporters. And what she references is the Bernie would have won line, which I think is a completely accurate line. But she thinks that it's actually causing more harm than good. So the title of her piece is The End of Bernie Would Have Won. And I want to give you a few excerpts and then we can discuss it. Because again, I think she's well-meaning, but I think that she hasn't been hit with everything that's made me super jaded about this country and about centrist Democrats specifically.
By the way, an alternate headline that's also online is Bernie Would Have Won is canceled. Okay, that sounds even more obnoxious, but a lot of times the writers don't write the headlines, just to be fair.
Right, so let me give you a few excerpts from Ashley Reese's article. Out of the anger, the dismay, the fear that followed November 8th, 2016 came a bitter refrain repeated by those who supported Bernie Sanders, Clinton's main competitor in the Democratic Party. Bernie would have won. It effectively poured salt on the post-election wound. Its central argument drew from early stats. Sanders gained more votes than Clinton in crucial states like Michigan and Wisconsin during the primary, which later turned red during the general. Additionally, Sanders was considered the anti-establishment candidate during a year when being anti-establishment was in vogue. Trump ran and won on it, and though he didn't get the popular vote, Clinton should have won, his anti-establishment messaging proved victorious in a slew of swing states. Now, this is where it starts to get maybe a little shaky where people could disagree.
Hold on, before we get to that part, let me just both agree and disagree already. So you can tell she's a good guy because she gets that there was an anti-establishment vibe. She gets that that's why Trump won. Already that makes her leagues above all the mainstream media who have never acknowledged that, because it would mean that there's an anti-them vibe, right? So she's correctly deduced that that was the driving force. And I don't disagree with Clinton should have won. We shouldn't have the Electoral College in the first place, so it's not about bitterness at all. In fact, I am bitter at the Electoral College because she got 3 million more votes and she should have been president. But the part that I disagree with, and it's really problematic, is just that little phrase she said in the beginning, effectively poured salt on the post-election wound. No, that's not the point. So folks on the other side, the corporate Democrats say, oh, you guys are you're being mean. This is really hurtful and you're trying to pour salt on the wound. At least from our point of view, and I think from the overwhelming majority of Bernie Sanders supporters, that's not the point at all. The point is to say, let's not make that mistake again.
Yes, exactly. Especially when centrist Democrats, like Joe Biden, are really relying on this message of electability to win the Democratic nomination. But the fact of the matter is, he is certainly not more electable than someone like Bernie Sanders, because Biden represents more of what Hillary Clinton represented. In fact, I think he even goes further in talking about his willingness to work with Republicans. In fact, recently he noted that he would be open to choosing a Republican as his VP. Disaster, right? So if you think that that makes you more electable, you're insane. And so that's the reason why the Bernie would have won line gets used so often, because there are progressive voters in this country who are hoping that that message gets across, that someone who is progressive, who actually cares about fixing this rigged economic system is more electable than someone who wants the status quo.
Yeah, so my main beef with this piece is that Ashley is not acknowledging that progressives and the whole country is being gaslit by corporate Democrats and the mainstream media, saying, remember, the establishment candidate, the so-called moderate centrist candidate, is more electable. But that's what you told us last time, and she didn't win. She's not president. It's not about pouring salt on the wounds. It's that they're gaslighting us just like they did last time. Look, I'll go further. The mainstream media is engaging in a lie it's on a mass scale. They're saying, even though it's the most obviously provable lie, the person you told us was more electable last time, has the same policies as Joe Biden, is the more establishment candidate, and she lost. But you turn around and go, nope, 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 nope. Bernie's not electable, just like we told you last time. Populism doesn't work, even though Trump won. Anti-establishment doesn't work, even though Trump won. No, you shouldn't believe your lying eyes. You should believe our propaganda that the establishment candidate is more electable. And they've repeated it a million times, a billion times, until it drilled into people's heads. I was talking to friends and family recently, and they're like, oh, I don't necessarily agree with Biden, but I gotta vote for him because he's more electable. Oh, God damn it, their propaganda worked. That's the whole point here.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So I'm gonna skip ahead to where she kind of talks about why she wants to cancel that line, right? The Bernie should have won line. As much as I largely agree with the ethos behind Bernie would have won, I'm canceling it for 2019. Too many people are losing the plot. A useful identifier like neoliberal has become so abused that it has become trite, and criticizing milquetoast Democrats for supporting centrist policies or policy agendas is now grounds for being called a Russian bot. And then later in the piece, she kind of talks about how while Bernie has managed to build this diverse coalition, the reputation is that they're a bunch of Bernie bros, right? That there isn't diversity, that it's a bunch of white males who are super aggressive on Twitter, and maybe we should move away from lines like Bernie would have won, so the centrist Democrats don't go after us so hard. But this is my biggest issue with her piece, because don't make the mistake that I think a lot of people make. They're not the good guys. The centrists that go after Bernie Sanders supporters and smear them and put out propaganda against them and propaganda against Bernie Sanders, they have no interest in playing fair or speaking the truth. They are ruthless, they play dirty, and they have no interest in telling the truth. So don't allow them to frame the discussion, and don't allow them to influence the way you behave. Now, obviously be respectful, be civil, but I think that making arguments like Bernie would have won are important arguments to make, especially when it comes to all the misinformation about electability.
Based on our piece, Ashley is clearly smart and has the actual facts. That's why it's frustrating that I think she's accidentally helping the propaganda of the wrong side. So let me explain what I mean by that. She also talked about avoiding the mistakes of last time. So it's not like she doesn't know that, she does, and she did put it in the piece, so that's important to note. But when she talks about the Sanders people, she says they have a reputation. Well, okay, and she says they have a reputation of being surly white leftist dudes. Then she goes on to say that's not an accurate representation of Sanders' base. So she knows and acknowledges in the piece, but so then why did you repeat it?
She repeated it because she's trying to make a point about how, hey, let's get rid of that reputation, and one way to get rid of that reputation is by avoiding phrases like Bernie would have won.
Yeah, so that gets to the very heart of this. So the last paragraph, she says, there's too much work to do to get caught up in the same skirmishes on loop for another 3 years. No, so those skirmishes are not a sideshow, are not counterproductive. They're actually the real battle. I don't mean like being too vituperative online, etc. No, I'm talking about, you have to acknowledge that the corporate media is on the side of the corporate Democrats. And even those words might be offensive to some, but they are in fact the corporate media. They're all multi-billion-dollar corporations who want to maximize profit, including the money they get from Money in Politics being spent on ads in their stations, okay? And the access that they get to politicians. Those corporate Democrats are corporate, they do take money from corporations and do serve their interests. So those folks are the ones that are together gaslighting the whole country and telling them, remember the Bernie supporters are all bros and surly white leftist dudes, and something about Bernie Sanders makes me sick to my stomach, even though I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna do propaganda on the so-called left-wing channel of MSNBC. And so Ashley, they're all doing that in unison. And so then they turn around and go, it reminds me of, I'll use an old analogy, Roddy Piper in the old WWF. He was a bad guy wrestler, he'd hit somebody over the head with a chair. When they turn around to hit him, he'd go, what, right? And that's what the media does. They smash us over the head, say, oh, you guys are just all white males, you don't even like minorities, all these slurs and smears and etc., right? None of it based in fact, as Ashley recognizes, etc. Then when we turn around and go, that's not true, everybody goes, oh, there goes the Bernie bros.
Yeah,
guys, Kyle, you're starting the skirmish. Why are you doing the skirmish on a loop? Because we're trying to desperately get our message out that they're lying to you. They're lying to you. The populace is more electable. Independents don't want corporate politicians that are Democrats or Republicans. They want someone who's actually gonna fight for them. That's an honest politician, then that's more populist. Independents decide the election. These are facts, and I can back it up with polling. So why do I raise my voice? To try to get past the din of the corporate media that oppresses us all with their propaganda that is based on lies. Those are facts. So don't take it out on us when we fight back. We didn't start the fight. They started the fight. And they did it in 2016 when they said Hillary Clinton's already leading. She has an overwhelming lead. When they hadn't done a single vote. They did it based on superdelegates who hadn't even voted yet and who were part of the corrupt establishment. They're doing it this time by saying on a loop 1,000,000 times over, Biden is more electable, Biden is more electable, establishment is more electable, moderate and centrist is more electable, even though it's empirically incorrect, right? So just all I'm saying is, don't bash us for trying to fight back against this giant machine that is spewing lies and propaganda.
Right, and the establishment wants to intimidate you from speaking the truth. Really, that's at the bottom of all of this. They want to dissuade you from telling the truth about the candidates, from speaking the truth about what actually happened in 2016, and don't let them do that. Don't give them that kind of power. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna show you the difference in anti-Medicare for all spending when it comes to advertising and pro-Medicare for all spending.
And look, it's not actively working together, as you'll see in the story that's coming up. But you gotta watch the story. You gotta tell everybody about it. I know we're on the eve of New Year's Eve, but share the stream, because in effect, Biden and McConnell are working together against the progressives.
Yep.
It is amazing. We're gonna do that story when we return.
I've been a fan of TYT, I believe, for the last 6 years.
5 years.
3 years now. 7 years.
4 years now.
2.5 years. I just started because she got me into it.
My boyfriend actually watches it every morning and every night, so I kind of just started watching it with him.
Looking through YouTube, looking for like, political shows that look cool.
I came across a very angry rant from Cenk, and that's when I knew.
So I was immediately in love with the show.
And then I haven't missed a live show since then.
10 times a day, I watch the show in the morning.
Whenever I had a bad day in high school, Young Turks.
Man, Cenk is just so blunt and honest, and I love the honesty, and there's no BS behind the news, and they just tell everything like it is.
There's nobody censoring them. There's nobody there to say you can't do this, you can't say that.
I feel like I get the real story from the Young Turks.
I am TYT.
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 My name is Alexandra Jablonski, but I go by Alex. I don't know why I just said Alexandra. I got stuck with one of the hosts. I shouldn't say stuck. I work for one of the hosts for The Breakdown, which is Hassan Piker. And I also work on Main Show a lot of the time as well. My favorite thing about TYT, I would definitely say the family unit aspect. I mean, I genuinely really like working here. Can I curse at all? No. Okay.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
I'm here today to announce the program known as DACA is being rescinded.
We don't run our own country. We've lost our democracy, and all we have left is rage.
Where are the Democrats? I would be on every cable news channel screaming and yelling and talking about what the Republicans are doing right now.
How do you expect us to get excited to show up to the polls for these loser Democrats? How come we have nothing but cowards who'll never fight? Primaries are everything.
Building a great wall on the southern border.
You have politicians who fearmonger about disenfranchised groups.
The first attacker came through the visa lottery.
Now they are against legal immigrants.
Ending chain migration.
They don't want people from those countries coming here because they're fucking racist. This guy's an absolute monumental disgrace to all of us as Americans.
I ordered to launch precision strikes on targets.
That is what I was warning about for literally years on this program. This is what they promised they would do if they got into power, and what do you know? They did it.
I've now shown dozens of videos on the Young Turks of cops handcuffing people who are bleeding to death. His life means nothing. We have been trained to be cowards, so we're gonna handcuff that guy bleeding to death.
What does this law mean? These are all just basic BS coverings.
To every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you.
They said that this was impossible, but now we're beginning to move that boulder. And at the end, we'll get our democracy back. Primary the living hell out of these Democrats, and let's take over the party. That's a ghost ship. Let's board it, and let's take it.
Back on a Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Vicky with a great comment here from the member section. Yes, Happy New Year to all TYT members. Join me in upgrading the activist member in 2020. Got that right,
yes,
Vicky.
I like that.
Thank you. If you want to do that, by the way, if you're already a member, tyt.com/upgrade. Deeply, deeply appreciated. Thank you so much. Boohoo Leon Cooperman throws a pity party writes in. Cenk, thanks for the video reminder to donate to Justice Democrats. I did that earlier on YouTube, guys. You should check that out too. Was able to make a small donation to AOC, Alex Morse, Morgan Harper, and Jessica Cisneros. Hopeful for a 2020 wipeout of the near tandem wing of the Democratic Party. Cisneros' election is one of the most important elections in the country. It's on March 3rd, the same day as Super Tuesday. And she's running against Cuellar. I mean, it proves Anna's point perfectly. Cuellar votes with Trump 70% of the time, takes Koch brother money, and I can go on and on. He is a Republican. He just calls himself a Democrat in order to trick people in that blue district. The Democratic Party is supporting Cuellar 100%.
Right.
So you got to make sure Cisneros wins. If she wins, then progressives are in great shape. If she loses, it's terrible. So justicedemocrats.com/Jessica is an easy way to go there. But go to justicedemocrats.com overall and check out all those wonderful candidates, the ones that this member pointed out, and everyone else. Now, speaking of which, Santos Juante on Twitter says, "Thank you, Anna. Political party labels are just that, labels. They are not identities." Devin Pernicone says, "My favorite way to ring in the new year, getting buzzed, listening to classic rock and watching TYT."
Ooh, what's your favorite classic rock band?
Okay.
I want to know.
Okay. You know, some of the music that I listen to, I denounce and reject. Because I love Sweet Home Alabama, and I have that on there.
I get it. Look, I understand that, but it's, like, I like the tune of that song. I don't like what it represents.
Of course, yeah. Another one with Alabama, well, mixed, but depending on who they're voting for. But no, it celebrates like Richard Nixon and says Watergate's no big deal in the song.
Yeah. Creedence Clearwater Revival, which is one of my favorites, even though at first I used to like make fun of them because I thought the name was weird. But then I realized like the lyrics to a lot of their songs are super political and awesome.
Yeah. Rage Against the Machine, we can go on. Anyway, back to gaming says, "Happy New Year, TYT, keep up the fight." On YouTube Super Chat, again, thank you. Lots of those messages. Happy New Year to everybody too. But let's do more show.
All right, so the opponents of Medicare for All, which include centrist Democrats and Republicans, have spent giant sums of money in an effort to defeat the proposal. Now, this is a huge problem because when you go to the progressive end of the spectrum, there is relatively little money spent to combat those ads. This was a wonderful piece written by Daniel Morans over at Huffington Post. I highly recommend you follow him on Twitter and read this entire report yourselves, but I'll give you the highlights. So through the reporting, we found that the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, an industry front group representing private health insurers, hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies, has spent at least $1 million in television advertisements blasting the policy in Iowa alone. It is also ghostwriting anti-Medicare for All op-eds for state lawmakers, according to a Washington Post report. We actually talked about that story recently on TYT. And so I want to show you an example of one of the ads that they're airing. And again, they spent over $1 million in television ads in Iowa alone, and that is significant. Take a look.
We come from different walks of life.
But we agree on one important thing.
We don't want to be forced into a one-size-fits-all government insurance system.
The politicians may call it Medicare for All, Medicare buy-in, or the public option.
But they mean the same thing. Higher taxes or higher premiums, lower quality care.
Politicians and bureaucrats in control of our health care.
We can't afford one-size-fits-all plans.
We need to fix what's broken, not start over.
Notice that they mentioned higher taxes and higher premiums. Medicare for All would wipe away premiums. It would wipe away premiums, deductibles, copays. None of that stuff would exist. Yes, your taxes will go up a little bit if you're middle class, but you wouldn't have to deal with any type of cost at the point of care.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to how Biden and Buttigieg are basically working with Republicans here on this issue, and it's devastating. But that ad, it's everything that's wrong with politics in America. They allow money in politics, so private interests just get to do endless ads to trick you. That everything in that ad was a lie, down to the guy drinking that drink in the background. These are all actors, obviously, right? And
good job noticing that guy.
Yeah, no, because they're like, oh, let's try to make it realistic. And in a later scene, he does it again, and a woman jogs by. They're like, oh, this looks like real America. No, these are all paid actors having nothing to do with any of that. There she is, okay? And oh, look, I'm going into my family's little laundry room, and I got the raincoats of my lovely kids, etc. Now you know that overall, but it works. It makes people think it's real. So what are the important lies? So as Anna pointed out, there are no premiums in Medicare for all. 100% lie. And they run it all over TV as if it isn't a lie. There are no premiums in Medicare for all. There are no co-pays, there are no deductibles. And then they say lower coverage, in essence. No, that's not remotely true. Even opponents of Medicare for all, like Senator Michael Bennet, has admitted it is the Cadillac plan. It is, quote, awesome coverage. It gives you better coverage than all of the private insurance in this country. When they say one size fits all, okay, it's just one size. Now you get dental and you get vision and you get everything covered and you can go to any doctor or any hospital. God, I hate that one size fits all. What do you mean? It gives you all of that coverage, and yes, it costs less. Everything is a lie in that ad. They do it on purpose. Why? It's paid by the insurance companies.
Exactly.
Who rip you off and want to keep on ripping you off and charging those premiums. And the reason they give you less coverage is because they want to maximize profit. That's less cost to them. And if you die in the meanwhile, that doesn't affect their bottom line at all.
Look, I don't do this often, but since there's such a disproportionate amount of anti-Medicare for all advertising out there right now, please share this video. Share it on all your social media platforms, share it with your friends, your family, everyone you can, because we need to fight back aggressively. Look, it doesn't matter if they're lying, right? If there isn't the other side challenging those lies, calling out those lies, and unfortunately, progressives don't have the same resources as these giant corporations who are looking to protect their profits. That's really what's happening at the heart of this story.
I gotta say one more quick thing before we give you more details. Look, there are 4 different people that are fighting, as you're gonna see here, all against us. So there's the Republicans, there's the insurance companies, there's the corporate Democrats, and then most importantly, there's the media. So every time you see a reporter saying that it takes away your private insurance, they're leaving out the second half of the sentence and replaces it with better insurance, with expanded coverage. They're doing that on purpose because they're all lying to you. And who are their major advertisers? Health insurance companies, politicians and political groups, and drug companies. All of the media in unison are absolutely positively lying to you. If you challenge them and you say, wait, when you say we get rid of private insurance, does that mean I'll have no insurance? They'll be forced to admit, well, I mean, you would have insurance. Would it have less coverage? Well, no, it would have more coverage.
Right.
All right, that's what I thought. You're all goddamn liars. That's why I'm telling you, share the video, because you're not gonna get the real facts anywhere else. And wherever you are, challenge them. Join the TYT Army, do whatever you gotta do. Challenge reporters in your area and nationally. Tell the truth, you get better insurance. It's a fact.
So let me give you some more details on the different organizations that are funding the anti-Medicare for all ads. In June, One Nation, a super PAC tied to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, announced a $4 million TV, radio, and digital advertising campaign blasting Medicare for all. A 30-second TV ad produced by the group features Americans holding signs with the length of hypothetical wait times for medical procedures under a single payer system. So I want to show you an example of that ad and then we'll discuss. Take a quick look.
How long will you wait for care? In other countries with socialized health care, patients wait weeks, even months for treatment. Everyone forced into the same government plan, no matter how serious. Medicare for All would eliminate private insurance for 180 million people. You and every American waiting in the same government-run plan. How long will you wait?
All right, more lies. So first of all, under this current system, we have monstrous waits. Last year, I tried to get a checkup, 4-week wait. A family member of mine had a very serious brain issue where he had severe pain in his head. and he had it in the past and it was very dangerous. They told him 3-week wait. That's private insurance, private insurance. Oh, you might die, 3-week wait. I had James Thompson on the show recently. He's a Justice Democrat that ran in Kansas. He's got stage 4 cancer. There's a group in Denver that knows how to operate on it and can get it out. His private insurance says, no, it's out of network. You'll have to pay for that treatment on your own. We're not gonna give it to you. And if you don't like it, you should go ahead and die.
Hey guys, isn't it great to have all this choice with private insurance companies?
What a great choice. Your choice are, you could stay in our network and die, or we'll bankrupt you. Besides which, you don't have the money. You're not gonna be able to pay it. So you don't have any goddamn choice at all. In Medicare for All, you could choose any doctor, any hospital. These are all nonstop lies by the people ripping us off.
So I want to move on to the progressive response to this, because in the article written by Daniel Morans, there was a progressive member of Congress who wished to speak anonymously. And I actually take issue with that. I don't know who this person is, but please, for the love of God, and I know some people, including progressives, aren't gonna like this phrase, I don't care, grow a set of balls and fight, right? Like if we're not gonna have fighters in like the progressive group, then like we have no chance. We don't have the money. We're supposed to have the people, so you need to fight. Don't hide who you are. It's pathetic. Anyway.
I'll tell you why in a second. Go ahead, read the quote.
All right, so here's the response. Someone needs to go into Iowa and answer those ads. We win the argument when we talk about people dying and people going bankrupt because of the insurance greed and pharmaceuticals. And so, look, okay, maybe there's a good reason why this person isn't identifying themselves. I agree with the sentiment here, and we do need to fight, but it's rich to say that we need to fight when you're anonymous in this article.
When you're hiding. So I'll tell you why they do that, because God forbid anyone should offend Nancy Pelosi, because the world will come down on them. And so even the progressives, even the best fighters we have been cowed, because why? If you say anything critical of Nancy Pelosi, and I know this to be a fact, I've experienced it myself, it's not even the other corporate Democrats. Yes, they do it. They're like, how dare you are so offensive. I can't believe you're causing lack of unity. You are just the rudest, most offensive person there is. I've seen it, not just to me. I've seen people gaslit like that in Congress, okay? But it's the worst yet is the media. All the reporters then attack in unison. Oh my God, this person, they're hurting the Democratic Party. Can you believe they said something that offends the other Democrats who are trying to torpedo Medicare for All? So look, I said on social media the other day, look, 45,000 people a year die because they don't have insurance. Now, we have public fire departments in this country. If we had private fire insurance and we let 45,000 people a year burn to death, it would be the most monstrous thing you ever heard. But we let 45,000 people a year die. And who is against Medicare for All? Nancy Pelosi is. And everybody lost their minds. That is a fact. It is an indisputable fact. And 81% of Democratic voters want Medicare for All. Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leadership don't, and Joe Biden doesn't, and Buttigieg doesn't. They defy 81% of the voters. We are right, they are wrong on what the Democratic voters want. But the reporters do not care about the voters. They care about kissing the ass of the powerful. No, red alert, Uyghur says something against the beloved Nancy Pelosi. All the corrupt reporters rush at once to defend her.
No, it's actually pretty incredible how well organized corporate media is in responding in an effort to defend Pelosi and the establishment. It's incredible, right? And so it goes back to something that I've said on the show before recently. Mainstream press is not journalism. It's just an extension of corporate America. It's an extension of corporate candidates and corporate establishment Democrats. That's what they are. And it's pathetic because they're not serving the people. They are supposed to be the watchdogs, and that is not what they're doing here. They're going after the watchdogs, and aggressively so, in an orchestrated way. So with that said, I do want to move on to the progressive candidates, namely Bernie Sanders, who I of course have endorsed, I have the most respect for, and I hope he wins the Democratic nomination. But Bernie, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Because he has outraised everyone. He has raised the most money, and of course, small dollar donors in this Democratic primary, but his ads don't go after the falsehoods that are being repeated over and over again by centrist Democrats and Republicans. What are you doing? What are you spending your money on? So let me tell you exactly what's going on. Sanders mentions Medicare for All briefly in an ad about his history fighting for progressive policies and another about his plans to fight corruption. That's not good enough. I know that Bernie Sanders doesn't like to fight dirty. I get that, right? But you can be aggressive, it's okay, because they're lying about you and they're lying about your signature policy that this country desperately needs.
No, we've entered a vicious cycle. So even though Medicare for All still polls at a majority, 55% of all Americans, 81% of Democrats, 64% of independents, but it is lower than it used to be. And it's now about at least 10 to 15 points lower because it was at 70%. So I know it for a fact, when it first came out, it was 70%, it's 15 points lower. So when pollsters and consultants see that, they warn candidates like Bernie Sanders, we've entered a vicious cycle where you are less likely to get elected if you defend Medicare for All. So then that forces progressives into not talking about it, but the other side pours on. So it creates no defense at all. So, and all it has is offense. Now, I want to talk about that group that spent the $4 million. You know who it's run by? It's run by McConnell's former chief of staff.
Yeah.
So, and it's a McConnell-backed PAC. So Mitch McConnell is spending money in the Democratic primaries, not himself, but this PAC that's aligned to him, to help Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg, the candidates against Medicare for All. Buttigieg is spending his own money, spending a ton of money. And in the ads, he also attacks Medicare for All. So look, you think it's an uncomfortable fact, and reporters, you love Buttigieg and you're biased. See, we're not biased, we just criticize Bernie Sanders. You guys don't admit your perspective at all, and so you cover for them. But the reality is, Buttigieg and McConnell and Biden all agree. They all hate Medicare for All. They're all against 81% of Democratic voters. Every one of those things that I just said is a fact. But once you tell reporters that, oh my God, you should see the tears. How could you say that about my beloved Buttigieg and Biden? Just because they're running almost the same ads that the insurance companies are running. Just as deceptive. And yes, those PACs are connected to McConnell. Yes, that's a fact, right? But it's an inconvenient fact that we're trying to bury because we're the corporate media. So if you're a Democrat, do not get suckered into believing the liars in the corporate media and the corporate Democrats who are working with Republican and corporate interests to deny you health care. Do not let those 45,000 people a year die because they don't have insurance, let alone the people who don't get treatment because it costs too damn much. And that is a giant number. And by the way, not only that, not only our lives are on the line, but our pocketbooks too. We all get bankrupt, right? If we hit a major problem, you're wiped out, right? And you lose your house, you lose everything. But every year, even if you don't hit a major problem, an average family of 4 spends over $12,000 a year on health care. And Medicare for All would take that away. So lies on top of lies, and there is no money, there's not enough money to counteract it. And so sometimes you see us almost screaming at the top of our lungs because we're trying to scream past all of the propaganda that these moneyed interests are doing, including, yes, the corporate Democrats.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, the police poke fun at the homeless, and they do it in the spirit of Christmas. So we have that and more when we return.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, We were doing a press release on it and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion. Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views. Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
When you choose Aspiration, you can also trust that your hard-earned money is deposited into a financial firm with a conscience. You're sending a message for change and saving yourself more than just a couple bucks along the way. With the Aspiration Spend and Save account, you'll actually pay no monthly fees. Aspiration also commits to donating 10% of every dollar of its earnings to charitable microloans for low-income Americans. And as a thank you, when you sign up with Aspiration, we'll give you a free month of TYT membership. Head to aspiration.com/TYT.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding, because this is C-SPAN. And anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before. All right, back on the Young Turks. Eclectic Miscellanea in the member section says, have to run, can't believe I have to wait until next year to watch TYT again. My last dad joke of 2019, he adds. Happy New Year, TYT family. Godzildo writes in.
Okay.
Or go to Zildo? Okay,
No,
anyway.
it's okay, we get it.
Quote, I love my private insurance company. Said no one ever. Okay, true.
Totally.
Bill Beasley says, thank you, Cenk and Anna and TYT for all you do for the progressive cause. Happy New Year to all from Ontario, Canada. Again, YouTube Super Chat, all over the world, okay? And last one from Super Chat, Jenna Killpop says, watching since 2010. Happy New Year, TYT, love you.
You've been with us for a decade. That's amazing.
That is amazing. Thank you right back at you, and much love back at you. And then I'll say one last thing here, tyt.com/climate. We're trying to raise to $200,000 to hire a climate reporter to talk about how money and politics influences it. So please, if you can, contribute to that. It would make a big difference. TYT.com. Oh, we're past 178 now.
Damn.
TYT.com/climate. So let's make that happen. Thank you, guys. What's next, Anna?
Police in Mobile, Alabama are apologizing after they thought it would be funny to use cardboard signs that they had confiscated from homeless people as a gag gift for their supervisor. Now, this happened again in Mobile, Alabama, and the photo was posted on Facebook. This is what the photo looked like with 2 police officers. And there was also a caption that read, want to wish everybody in 4th precinct a Merry Christmas, especially our captain. Hope you enjoy our homeless quilt. Sincerely, Panhandler Patrol. So this isn't funny, it's not cute, and luckily the police department did issue an apology and they took that photo down, but that doesn't change what's really going on in the minds of some of these police officers. These are people who are living in the streets. These are people who don't have homes. These are cardboard signs asking for money so they can eat, so they can live. I mean, just recently, there was a homeless person who died on the steps of City Hall in Los Angeles, okay? We're in the middle of winter. This is not cute. And so you're supposed to protect and serve. What are you doing? Poking fun at the homeless?
So last couple of weeks, I went to serve food for the homeless. So I tell you that only because I interacted with those folks a lot more and talked to them than I have before. And so, look, I think that a lot of people like these cops don't get, no, they had a job very recently. They had a home very recently, a huge percentage of them. And everybody's one paycheck away. Not everybody, but to be fair, about 40% of Americans are one paycheck away from losing everything. And so I hope this is obvious to a lot of folks, and we have a lot of progressives watching, so it's obvious to a lot of you. But it isn't obvious to people like this and to a stunning number of people, okay? So having talked to people at great length that are homeless, story after story, foreclosed on, and then get into a vicious spiral, harder to get a job. People who are engineers, one guy I met is a social worker and has a good job right now, but has to live out of his car because he has too much student debt.
Jeez.
It's unreal, okay? And so there's this common misconception that all the homeless are either drug addicts or have mental health issues. Actually, for example, this is different across country, but in LA, that's only 42%. The 58% are people who just literally cannot afford a home. So now a lot of folks move back in with family. I talked to a teacher recently, and she couldn't afford her $1,200 apartment because she's getting paid minimum wage, $15 an hour. She's a teacher, full-time teacher, right? But what if she didn't have that supportive family? Well, I've seen people who don't, and then they wind up in the streets. And so in different parts of the country, including here in LA, you think of LA as warm, but actually there's a whole desert part of LA County, and it gets to be freezing. And if you're in a tent, you freeze to death. And so it happened on the steps of City Hall, but it happens all across the country. And so for God's sake, have a little empathy. And when I talk to those folks, that's the number one thing that they asked for. They said, can you please just remember to love thy neighbor? It's not too much to ask for, especially for folks who are in a position of authority and dealing with them every day. And even if it's an unfortunate situation, please try to show compassion rather than being merciless.
Yeah. Man, it's so vicious toward the powerless, and I just don't get it. But anyway, the police chief for the Mobile, Alabama Police Department issued an apology saying the following: as a police department entrusted with serving and protecting our community, we offer our sincerest apology for the insensitive gesture of a Facebook post by two of our officers where they were holding up a homeless quilt made of panhandling signs. Although we do not condone panhandling and must enforce the city ordinances that limit panhandling, it is never our intent or desire as a police department to make light of those who find themselves in a homeless state. Rather, our position has always been to partner with our community service providers to help those faced with homelessness with hope to improve their quality of life. And so I want to just note that the homeless population is increasing rapidly in the United States. In Alabama alone, 13% of the population is homeless. And so for those of you who think that you're untouchable and that this wouldn't happen to you, as Cenk mentioned, statistics prove otherwise. I mean, think about how unstable the economic situation is for a lot of Americans when it comes to student loan debt, when it comes to medical debt, when it comes to unaffordable housing. Wages have not kept up with inflation. Wages have not kept up with the rising cost of all these different elements and components of life. And so it goes beyond empathy. We need real action, we need real solutions. And the system that we have set up right now is, I mean, it'll victimize anyone who's not uber wealthy. And to see like this lack of compassion is disgusting.
Yeah, last two quick things here. Other people reminded me that once you get an eviction notice, and I have to confess, I haven't gotten one before. So that's why it's important to go talk to people who are in that condition, and it'll wake you up. They said once you get an eviction notice, well then that stays on your record. It makes it infinitely harder to get any other apartment. So then you get into another vicious cycle. So, and then when you don't have an apartment and you're living out of your car, it's harder to get a shower, which makes it much harder to get a job. It's one vicious cycle after another. But the last point is one of a little bit of hope. You'd be surprised, not just national groups, but in your neck of the woods, wherever you are in the country, there are oftentimes, almost always, some wonderful, heroic people that go out of their way to help the homeless over and over and again. Find those people and help them.
Definitely. All right, I kind of want to end the second hour on a happy note.
Yeah.
So this is New Year's Eve. Are you doing anything fun?
Oh, okay.
We only have like a minute and a half.
Yeah, so my family's getting together. And yesterday in the post game, I mentioned that me, my mom, and dad were going in a circle of gratitude. We don't call it that. We're not that corny.
How cute.
Okay, but we were talking about how, oh my God, we're so grateful. We're really lucky to have lived the lives that we lived. I mean, my dad did most of the hard work, obviously, coming up from being an olive farmer to providing for us, et cetera. But I forgot to mention, so I'm glad you brought it up here. And this is the kind of conversations we have in the post game normally, right? But my dad kept saying over and over again, I'm so lucky to have married your mom. It made all the difference.
That's really sweet.
It is, and he's like, he keeps telling everybody, like, you guys don't know how lucky I am. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have any of this. It's so sweet. And gratitude, by the way, makes you happier as a person. That's a virtuous cycle.
Totally, and the reason why it makes you happier as a person is because it makes you cognizant of things that you might otherwise take for granted in life, right? Like all the little comforts. We have all these little comforts that we just take for granted, and taking a moment to like acknowledge those things really helps you, see the bright side of life, which is difficult to do these days.
Right, and then my mom said, okay, so Cenk, you wanna go on a diet together next year? And I said, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to do New Year's resolutions I can't keep. Okay, but guys, the show's not over, by the way. And of course, as always, we will tell you that we are grateful to you. And we do have a post game for the members today. And that is not corny, or, well, maybe it is corny, but it's super real. Because there's no show and there's no independent media and there's no progressive media if it wasn't for our members. So tyt.com/join and you'll get all of our programming. We still have interviews coming up for you live right now, and then we've got a post game as well. tyt.com/join. We'll see you there.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something, an idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united, a political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk! No!
You began without me. You began without me. But God as my witness, I will be the one to finish it.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation. And it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it.
We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process. That is America.
On top of that, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award.
Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
A haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox. I told you we were coming.
I mean, you talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is. All right, back on the Young Turks. Joining me now is Nazita Lajavardi. She has got a new book out. She's a political scientist and attorney at Michigan State University. And her book is called Outsiders at Home, The Politics of American Islamophobia. Nazita, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So later in this interview, I'm gonna tell you a story that is both encouraging and devastating at the same time. So you have that to look forward to. But first, let's talk about the current state of Islamophobia in America. I'll start with the most general question of all time. How bad is it?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Islamophobia is rampant. There are negative attitudes towards Muslim Americans that are important for predicting policy support that harm Muslims abroad and at home. Islamophobia is also incredibly powerful in shaping drivers of hate crimes. I mean, we've seen all these anti-Semitic attacks throughout the country in recent weeks. Similar things have happened to the Muslim population driven by resentment. Islamophobia also underpins, for instance, anti-Sharia laws that are being proliferated throughout state legislatures. I mean, you name it, Islamophobia is important. It affects the lives of millions of people.
So it's horrible and a real problem throughout the country. It does get comical sometimes, though, in places like Oklahoma, where they pass laws against Sharia law, as if Sharia law is like this close to taking over Oklahoma. I mean, but it does go to show you the paranoia that is set in. So that's what I wanted to ask you about. So what's driving this? Where is most of this fear and hatred coming from?
Yeah, so I have some work that's looked into what underlies feelings of resentment towards Muslims in the United States with my colleague Kasra Oskoui. And what we find is actually old-fashioned racist beliefs. So beliefs that Muslims are biologically inferior, that they are barbaric, that they are savages. These beliefs that they are so biologically inferior to others, especially whites in America, are really underpinning modern day resentment towards Muslim Americans. In terms of Sharia law, I mean, it's very interesting that you raised that, just given that anti-Sharia laws are actually not possible to implement in the United States, right? Because an anti-Sharia law is really just a law that says you're not going to be adopting the laws of another country as part of your state law. So yeah, duh, you know.
Yeah, no, it's duh on a couple of grounds, right? Yes, no, we're not going to be adopting Saudi Arabia's laws in Oklahoma. Although if Trump had his way, maybe we would, because he's such good friends with Saudi Arabia and the dictators that run it. But also, it says in the Constitution you cannot establish a religion. So obviously you could not establish Islam as a religion in Oklahoma. By the way, you also can't establish Christianity in Oklahoma. They probably missed that memo.
Right.
But Nisita, let me get
welcome to secularism.
I know, right? But secularism brought to you by the founding fathers. That part they missed in history class. Okay, so the story is of my family. So I was born into a Muslim family. I'm agnostic now, but my parents, when they first came here, my dad, all the way back in the early 1960s, was actually treated wonderfully. So when he got here and he was doing a master's program, a lot of people helped him with open arms, all, generally speaking, white Christian Americans. His professor basically gave him a car. He had great friends that he's still friends with to this day. A wealthy couple decided to take my mom and dad on a vacation for a week in Miami. What? Okay. And so our experience is fascinating because this country could not have opened its arms more to us. That is why, that's why it's just a wonderful story in some sense, but it's also disheartening because of the 180-degree turn that happened since then. So there's got to be something that drives it that has actually affected and poisoned the culture, because America didn't used to be this way, and we know it as a fact.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting that you use this example. I think numerous other people from the Middle East who stem from Muslim backgrounds or Christian or Zoroastrian backgrounds, and you name it, they've had similar experiences in the United States, especially pre-9/11. When they arrived to this country, a lot of them had experiences of integration. But I think what's really important here, and something that we can document, and which I've documented in some of my work and also in my book, is that prior to 9/11, especially between the 60s to 9/11, most of the discrimination that people from the Middle East and North Africa faced was predominantly on the basis of national origin. And you might understand why that might be, right? There was a lot of laws that were being passed. There were a lot of incidents that pertain to country-specific individuals. So, for instance, the experience of Iranian Americans, given the hostage crisis, is very different than the experiences of Turkish Americans. And discrimination that was felt about the hostage crisis was predominantly geared towards Iranians in the United States. So, when discrimination occurred during that time, it was predominantly on the basis of national origin. What we see 9/11 is the development and this grouping of a newfound group, Muslim Americans. And all of a sudden, groups who may not even actively identify as Muslim are being grouped into the Muslim category and are experiencing discrimination on the basis of it. So, even groups, for instance, like Sikhs, they also, I mean, this is an obvious example, but they obviously are also victimized as part of being identified as Muslim or Middle Eastern. And so this processing and developing of a group is called panethnicity. It's when the public and when the society in general imposes a group on you. So folks from these countries may never have identified as Muslim first. That may not have been their identity of choice. But over time, we have enough data to show that, especially in the news media, for instance, the mentions of Arab Americans has gone down. The mentions of Middle Eastern Americans has gone down. The mentions of even Turkish American or national origin groups has gone down. So what we really have are Muslim Americans replacing it, which is, it sort of raises an important point, which is that individuals who frequently experienced integration prior to 9/11 are now sort of being subsumed in a heightened era of discrimination, though they may want to remain invisible.
Yeah, so media is such a huge part of this because the largest Muslim country in the world is, almost no American can answer it, it's Indonesia. And so Sikhs who are not Muslim will just get more anti-Muslim discrimination in this country than Indonesians will. And it's because of why? The media. The media says the turban is Muslim and dangerous, etc. Sikhs wear a turban, but they're not Muslim. Indonesians generally, not everyone, but overall, don't wear turbans. Are not identifiably Muslim as you would recognize them from television reports of what is characterized as scary Muslims attacking us, right? Not just 9/11, they've been doing it to the Palestinians for decade after decade after decade. So, and I'll tell you, and one more thing before I ask the question, one of those great people that were friends with my dad and graduate students together, and they've been lifelong friends, now is anti-immigrant, even though he was the most open to immigrants earlier in his life. Why? Because he's been watching Fox News. So,
yeah, do not undercut the power of media consumption on shaping anti-Muslim attitudes and also policy support. Like, it is amazing how we see even effects of like consumption of certain types of news, like Fox News or Breitbart, or even social media like Twitter and Facebook. A couple colleagues and I have a paper on this. I mean, we found that even among Democrats, the impact of exposure to this media is so important in shaping support for anti-Muslim policies. Like, it actually more powerful than for Republicans, if you can even imagine that.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine it. The media does mass propaganda, whether they intend to or not. Fox News certainly does intend to. I think the other stations also participate, I hope without intent. But I do want to go to one other thing, and I don't know, to what degree you got information on this, but the other group that I noticed has been doing a ton of Muslim propaganda, and it's even more disheartening to me, is a group that I belong to, agnostics and atheists. So I wrongly believe that atheists might be more rational because we've gotten past what we were taught when we were kids, and we overcame that propaganda that we went through. But there's a whole wing of the atheist movement that is more virulently anti-Muslim than almost any other subset in this country. Any sense of what happened there?
That's really interesting, actually. I had not come across that in my own research, so that's really interesting. For us, it's actually found to be those who are the most religious and who identify as born again are the most resentful towards Muslims in the data that we have. So it's quite interesting that you raised this. It's not something I've come across at all, but definitely something to pay attention.
Yeah, there's two elements of that. One is this ideology they put out there that all the religions are bad, but Islam is the worst because their text is violent, et cetera, et cetera. And Cenk, why won't you admit Islam is the worst? Because it isn't. Even Sam Harris, who can't stand Islam, admits the Old Testament is actually more violent than the Quran. But part of that is, and last thing here is foreign policy. So how much is foreign policy driven? Because a lot of those new atheists are driven by the Palestinians are irredeemable. They must be occupied forever because they're violent Muslims. There's nothing we could do but cage them. So how much of that do you think drives this?
I mean, this goes back to the old-fashioned racism, right? I mean, look at the support for policies. They come from very much the beliefs that these individuals are barbaric and savage, and they need to be under a certain type of control. That narrative that you just spoke is very much old-fashioned racism. It's biological inferiority. It's labeling people as inferior, and that belief is so powerful, at least in American politics. It does not surprise me that drives foreign policy attitudes.
Yep. All right, everybody check out the book, Outsiders at Home, The Politics of American Islamophobia. Nizita, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, we'll be back with another great interview for you in 1 minute.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
The earth is burning.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that should shake you enough, period. But that so many people in power don't seem to care.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
We have to also remember that we like to put people in prison in this country.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign. When you sign up for NordVPN, you'll take control of your internet experience while helping support us here at TYT. NordVPN allows up to 6 connections at once and no data limits, so you can get all the content you want on any device. For a limited time, go to nordvpn.com/TYT or use the coupon TYT to get a 3-year plan for 81% off plus 2 amazing gifts, 4 extra months and the new NordPass Password Manager app.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm at a Wolfpack gathering.
We're growing. I see faces that I recognize, but I also see a lot of faces that I don't recognize, and that's fantastic.
We are all taking time out of our lives to be here, and that's amazing. That means we truly believe in this.
Make no mistake, everyone in this room is a leader in a Wolfpack.
Alaska, West Virginia, Montana, Georgia, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, everyone is here. All these folks paid with their own money and sometimes took vacation days to come here to strategize on how to get our democracy back and get money out of politics.
Or you get more political power just because you have more money. This is why it requires a constitutional amendment.
The process of winning in your state next year doesn't begin when session begins. It begins right now.
To work to a goal, something this big that you're actually making a difference of, there's very few things in the world that really compare to that feeling.
Equal rights to fair representation, rights for human beings, anti-corruption laws, and free and fair elections. That's what we are fighting for.
What were the founding fathers? Revolutionaries. And they built revolution into the document.
So Article 5 is the way we have to go.
This is how you do it.
You're in this as a team, you're in this together. The fight will always continue.
That fight is not between the left and the right. That fight is between basically greed and humanity.
So I'm asking you to put differences aside, whether you're conservative or independent or progressive, to join forces to say no more corruption.
You get beyond the fear, you take that first step, and you'll change the world.
What I want to leave you with, of course, is hope. And I want to assure you that if we keep fighting together, we're going to win together. We're going to get that convention, we're going to get that amendment, and we're going to get our democracy back. Come join us, wolf-pack.com.
back to the conversation. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we are about to have a fascinating conversation with a congressional candidate for New Jersey's 9th District. Zina Spesakis is the candidate that I'm referring to, and it is a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
So you have a fascinating story because of where you come from. You have an immigrant part of your history, but you also have this experience working in the belly of the beast, Wall Street. And when I look at your platform, it is incredibly progressive. Front and center, you want to do something about climate change and you want to take drastic measures in order to combat climate change. But you're also a huge supporter of Medicare for all. So I want to get into all of that. But first, let's start with your history. Talk about your family's history as immigrants here in the United States and what encouraged you to run for Congress.
Sure, yeah, well, my parents were from Greece. I'm a first generation immigrant here, and I'd like to tell the story that I actually I didn't speak any English entering school. We spoke Greek at home, and when I entered kindergarten is when I first started learning English. You know, my parents, when I was younger, typical immigrant story, would wake up before I got up to go work, would come back home after I went to bed. So a lot of my childhood was spent with my grandmother, who raised my sister and me for a large part of it. So we saw a lot of hard work. We saw a lot of sacrifice growing up. I saw two parents who, a lot of first generation immigrants tend to be conservative. Mine were probably more on the progressive liberal side. They were especially socially, and for me, it was just, that's how you get anywhere. Yeah, this is how you get the American dream. You work hard. You try to educate yourself. My mother really stressed the importance of education. I was lucky enough to get into Stuyvesant High School in New York City, and that really helped me get into a really good college, which kind of, it helped me in a lot of ways. So
definitely, yeah. I mean, our stories are pretty similar in that I also didn't speak a word of English when I entered kindergarten, and I remember being like deeply ashamed of that. And so I would wake up extra early to watch Sesame Street and learn English. But it is incredible how you you just fight through it. And I love the fact that you're fighting for some of the big issues in America today, in the world today. And so front and center, as I mentioned earlier, is your battle to combat climate change. So can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. Just to put it in a little bit of context, I work in clean energy, and I've also been an environmental activist for years, and I thought I was doing my part with respect to the climate crisis. And I say crisis because it is that at this point. I have two young children, so for me, it's real skin in the game. But when I read the UN's IPCC report last fall, and it told us that we only have about 12 years to really do anything about it, and cut our emissions by about half, is what it said. Otherwise, we face apocalyptic outcomes. That terrified me, and not because we only had 12 or 11 years, but I also study the science. And every single climate model that I've ever analyzed has always overestimated the amount of time we have in which to react. So that 12 years for me was more like 5 or 6, So the urgency was there. And, I live in a blue district. I'd voted Democrat for years, sort of tick down the line in New Jersey. And then I just sort of woke up one day and I said, what has my opponent, Bill Pascrell, really done as far as leadership? Because it's not only just voting for things, and even his record voting for climate isn't that great anyway, but it's also showing vocal leadership, because you are dealing with a bunch of like climate deniers on the other side who are swaying the conversation. So it's incumbent upon us as Democrats to really pull that back to where it's supposed to be, to really lean on the science. So I call these folks, a lot of these establishment folks, climate delayers. And quite honestly, Anna, in my book, a climate delayer is worse than a climate denier, because at least with a climate denier, you know what you're getting.
Yes.
You know what you're getting. A climate delayer, you assume that if you're voting for them every 2 years, that they're actually trying to work on the problem. And it's gotten to the point where, I get asked, what can we do? What can we do to reverse this? I said, I have to be honest with you, we can't reverse it right now. We are at the point where the best we can do is slow it the hell down, in order to give our children a chance to, start addressing it. Because right now, the climate emergency has become an intergenerational issue. for the world.
Yes.
And that means it isn't an election cycle thing. We have to stop thinking that, short term, 2 years. We have to start thinking generationally. How are we going to design our society so that it deals with this? Forget the extinctions that we've already seen. Those animals, those plants are not coming back. Those insects are not coming back, but at least we can slow it down and try to reverse it, over centuries, quite honestly, right now.
So you're taking on the Democratic establishment, which is not a small undertaking. And I've seen from personal experience how incredibly vicious the Democratic establishment can be. Have you experienced any of that pushback, to put it lightly?
Not quite yet. We will be challenging Bill Pascrell to a debate next year, and we hope that he, shows up. He's never really debated anybody in our district. I haven't. I tell folks. I spent almost 2 decades on Wall Street dealing with some of the greediest, most intelligent people on the planet, and I feel that sort of has hardened me to whatever they might be able to throw my way here in New Jersey. I understand their tactics. I understand their tricks. I understand how in bed the Democratic machine is here with respect to how ballot placement and how that affects outcomes. But this is a presidential year. We are, we're going to be reaching out to every single voter we can and make sure that people understand that this election cycle, they will have a choice, a real progressive choice. Because I think everybody would agree that free and fair elections is what we want. And that's what we're going to educate everybody on.
So in your bio, you write, business is a world I've always been very comfortable in, having earned a BA in economics and government from Cornell and an MBA in finance and business economics and MA in international relations from the University of Chicago. I spent nearly 2 decades on Wall Street, at one point working as managing director at Iowans Global Investors. So talk to me about that experience and how you, in my opinion, progressed to where you are today, because that is a very different world from what you're talking about in your campaign.
Yeah, that is a very different world. It's kind of, on paper at least, I don't scream progressive. I kind of have my mom to thank for for my progressive tendencies, if you will. She really taught me the importance of caring for others, and we're all in this together. She taught me the importance of being selfless. I did spend an enormous amount of time getting all these fancy MBAs from top schools and spending all this time on Wall Street building and operating companies, and I think that gives me a really good insight into what exactly is wrong. Not only that, but also how to dismantle it and rebuild it so that it works for people instead of profits. So I'd like to tell folks I'm the progressive you want, because I know how to take it apart and rebuild it back up so that it functions for everybody. I know where the levers are.
So in an op-ed for the Star Ledger, you wrote a piece defending Medicare for All. It's titled, "A Congressional Candidate Makes an Argument for Medicare for All." So look, I am always skeptical of candidates who say they support Medicare for All, because it's a popular proposal, and then they'll turn around and say, well, I also support Medicare choice. So what do you feel about the public option? Are you willing to compromise on Medicare for All in any way?
Not at all. Actually, my Medicare for All platform probably is identical to Bernie Sanders, for example, or Pramila Jayapal. Our system right now is broken. You have perverse economic incentives set up in pharmaceuticals and in health insurance. It is not working for people. We have 28 million uninsured. The only way we can get this done is if we have just Medicare for All. Popular, public options and all these fancy tweaks and stuff like that. There's just, I don't know who these candidates are trying to appeal to. Perhaps they're donors, but for me, if it's not Medicare for All, it's not going to function properly, and that's a big contrast between myself and Bill Pascrell, who's taken over $1.1 million from big pharma and insurance companies just in corporate contributions. So he's not going to support this. And parts of our district here in New Jersey have the highest uninsured rates in the entire state. So it's we can't service our constituents unless we really attack the structure of the healthcare industry. And right now, the way it's set up, the incentives are perverse. You make money if you ration care. And if you increase premiums, that is backwards. That's backwards to any other developed country as well.
So let's talk a little bit about strategy, because you're right on the issues. I personally agree with you on a lot of your positions, but fighting for these positions is a completely different issue. So how do you propose making these proposals become a reality?
Well, there's a few things actually there. I think it's kind of sort of strategically, if you think about it, it's interesting. It's very interesting to me that a lot of the primary challengers around this country happen to also be Bernie. The majority of them have to be Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders Bernie Sanders to Democrats is what I call them. They believe in in Bernie's message and in his character. Quite honestly, I think we need to get a critical mass of progressives in Congress, not just myself, but maybe other folks, for example, from the brand new Congress slate, which I'm on this year. We need to get a critical mass in there. That's one thing. The second thing is to be highly, highly vocal about it. I'll give you an example. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I think one of the biggest things that she has done, one of the most positive things she has done, is she has changed the conversation on the climate emergency. Prior to her, people were scared to talk about it. It was hilarious to me. I'm like, why? But I think as leaders, we have to be very vocal about it, and we need to be vocal about it, even if it's not politically convenient. Because this is life or death for people who we represent. We cannot be vocal about it. So there's sort of a several-pronged attack on how to get this done. But I think a lot of it is if we have strong leaders who are very vocal about it, even a little bit of airtime starts swaying people. Because of what the Republican Party has done to great effect, I think, over the last couple of decades, has been to pull the conversation over to the right. And so all of a sudden, what we consider center now, I'm old enough to remember what is considered centrist right now was moderate Republican in the early 1990s.
Definitely.
I just aged myself.
No. I mean, you're absolutely right about that. So the Overton window has certainly shifted to the right considerably, and I think you're absolutely right about the action that we need to take in Congress. I love candidates who are primarying centrist Democrats, and we need to fight for them. We need to get them elected into Congress. For anyone watching this interview, if you're interested in supporting Zina, just go to zinaforcongress.com. You can also donate by going to zinaforcongress.com/donate, and you can volunteer by going to zinaforcongress.com/volunteer. Zina, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Anna.
All right, have a good one. Happy New Year. And Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for watching TYT, and we will see you in the new year.
We're gonna do a little thing we like to call Weekly World News. Weekly World News. I cull stories from around the globe, stories that aren't covered on the main show or aren't covered enough, and I turn it into a 5-question quiz for Dave and Steve. All right, do we have our answers? A from Dave and C from Steve, and the correct answer is B, an oil tanker that sank off the coast of China. Okay, we have one answer of B and one answer of C. What is the correct answer? It is, of course, A, an airplane wing walking stunt gone wrong. Okay, we have an answer of A from Dave and C from Steve. The correct answer is B. We have an answer of B and C. What is the correct answer in true Weekly World News tradition? It's A.
Come on.
Taking the bear out for ice cream.
That can't possibly be true. We're terrible today. Just terrible. I often think about the terror that my grandmother was under until she was 8 or 9 years old, and how horrific that experience must have been in this state of discomfort for the benefit of other people.
People will still treat you like you're the problem. That's what we mean when we say living well black. We're just trying to live our best life and trying to be the best that we can be. And we're frustrated and tired of people treating us like we're criminals.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now, these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here. This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Such a big fan. Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Hello and welcome back to the conversation. I'm John Idarola, and we've got an awesome interview for you. It's one of those special ones. In studio, joining us now, JD Scholten, a candidate in Iowa's 4th district.
Yep.
Welcome to the studio.
Thank you for
Good to have
having
you
me.
here.
Yeah, likewise.
We don't get to meet a lot of actual candidates. They're people on the screen. So we're glad to have you here. And we got a lot to talk about. So we were, I'm gonna start off with, we were talking before the show about the fact that you're running in Iowa. And with all the stress of a normal congressional race, but also it's, the whole country's eyes are on Iowa. How does that affect your run for Congress?
Well, we've been trying to figure out what's the best way for us to run while the caucuses are all going on. Currently, we're on a 39 county tour, going to all 39 counties and calling it the Don't Forget About Us tour and going to towns of under 1,000 people, because these are a lot of issues that don't get the headlines. And so a lot of these small communities are struggling to keep their grocery stores. And yet we're the second most agriculture producing district in America. We have these get bigger, get off the farm policies that are hurting our farmers. And so because of the caucuses, it's been nice because we can amplify some of our messaging and the messaging of the district.
Do you find that for you as a you're running in a primary. Is it helpful to you to have? Is it a little bit easier to get media coverage of your race? I mean, I know that they're generally there for the presidential races, but they're at least in the neighborhood. Is that helpful?
Well, we're probably the only race in America where we don't have a primary and the incumbent does. It's a unique situation, but so that allows the presidential candidates, they don't want to choose on the primary, or if there was a primary.
That's true, yeah.
So we actually been doing events with a lot of them, and it's I think it's been great because a lot of our message has kind of gotten into their talking points. And one of the things I constantly am pushing them is holding our antitrust laws accountable, especially in agriculture. It's just, that is something that the progressive movement should be picking up more and more on. It's just our farmers are being handcuffed right now. And you look back of the history of my district, we had Tom Harkin and Berkeley Bedell, two prairie populists, really push that message back in the day, and now it's coming alive again.
I only mention this because you've been talking about the farmers, but I noticed we don't generally as a country talk all that much about farmers, despite the fact that they're still a large part of the economy, very important, obviously, and it's a very traditional American industry that's often forgotten. But I saw today, obviously, Donald Trump in the past had provided some aid to farmers who've been hurt by the trade war, among other things, and it showed that for the most part, the way it was distributed, the big farms were getting the most aid, and the family farmers, the ones who arguably needed the most, again, were being left behind.
Yeah, I mean, we have these get big or get off the farm policies, and whether it's the aid because of the tariffs or even just our trade policies from before or our tax policies from before, it's sucking the wealth out of our rural communities, and these farmers are hurting. And if we ended the trade war tomorrow, because of market consolidation, because of the abuse of the renewable fuel standard, a lot of these things are hurting our farmers. And I saw a tweet from a Republican that said, if things don't change, all farmers are just going to end up contract employees in the next generation, and that's really sad.
Yeah. Except from the point of view of some of those large companies that probably like to set up that system.
I mean, that's the struggle. You see Cargill paying out their 125 members $5 million a piece. Well, our farmers are barely making cost of production. You ask any pork producer in the 4th District how they did in 2017. Well, Smithfield is owned by China Pork, and the CEO of China Pork made $291 million in 2017. Where these farmers are just handcuffed. And when you have these multinational corporations dictating the policies, the farmers are being squeezed on the input side. They're being told how to farm, and then the markets are not there. And so of the consumer dollar, less than 15 cents makes it back to the farmer, which is an all-time low.
Okay, well, you are running against Steve King, potentially. I mean, he's, as you said, he's in a primary and he's got a well-funded opponent, apparently. We're gonna turn to him in a few minutes, but let's start off, for people who might not be familiar with your candidacy yet, where are you coming from? What's your history in politics, your history with the state?
Yeah, so I have not the most traditional running for Congress. I was born and raised in the district, 5th generation Iowan, come from a long line of farmers and educators. But first to be raised in town. I grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, the largest city in the district. I chased minor league baseball. I played minor league baseball, chased that dream. Afterwards, worked as a paralegal. And ultimately in 2016, after the election, I wanted to get more involved, but I didn't know what that meant. And I went to visit my grandma, who's my inspiration in life. And she told me, JD, you got to move back and take care of the farm. And I was living out of state. So I moved back and started my own consulting, working as a paralegal, a little thing. And then I just saw what was happening in the district. And for about a month, I saw that there was nobody in this race on the Democratic side in the last cycle. And so we launched a very humble grassroots campaign that just grew and grew and grew. And as a result of what we were able to do, we moved the needle 24 points last cycle, which is 3rd most amongst all challengers.
And the race was within 3 points, I believe?
3 points.
And this is a race that originally wasn't going to be contested.
There was nobody when we launched, and so we didn't know, we didn't hear anything from anybody, and so that's when I said, you know what, I can't sit on the sidelines. I don't know if I could raise $5, but I know I can get out there to the people. And my political heroes, the Berkeley Bedells, the Tom Harkins, the Paul Wellstones, what we learned was if you get out there to the people, prove you're trustworthy and prove that you're gonna fight for your constituents, you're gonna earn votes. And we got 25,000 more votes than there are Democrats in the district. And with moving the needle that much, we outperformed the top of the ticket by 17%. And so we even though we lost, we did so much. We have to do this again.
Yeah, and that's certainly provides some momentum moving into running against them again.
Yeah.
So you moved the needle a lot. Yeah. The district is still thought of as being somewhat conservative, though. Yeah. So tell me about your platform, the issues you're choosing to run on in a place that's traditionally voted for Republicans. How does that influence your slate of programs?
I mean, you run as who you are. That's what I feel. And so we talk about healthcare every day. We talk about economy that works for everyone, not just the 1% and the corporations. And we talk about cleaning up Washington. And so we call it fix, fight, secure. Fix healthcare, fight for an economy that works for everyone, and secure a democracy by cleaning up Washington. And a lot of that resonates to people all over the political spectrum. We also talk a lot about climate change because there's so much potential in my district because it's so agriculture heavy. We're the second most agriculture producing district in America. We have a huge opportunity to take the carbon out of the air and put it into our ground, and it would help our farmers out. We have a lot of things like that could really be a win-win for not only our farmers, but Iowa and our nation and the planet.
So I was reading up on your campaign, and you've been doing a lot of town halls, which is obviously helpful for getting your message out, but also it's a pretty strong contrast from Steve King, who up until recently was not interested in doing those.
Right.
So as you're meeting these voters, what are some of the things that come up most often with them?
Well, especially right now, because we're doing it in towns of under 1,000 people, it's more rural. We've been asked. We asked to hear stories as much as it's made talking, and so it's been phenomenal. We heard a woman from Hardin County who she said her inhaler would cost her $240 a month, and she told her doctor, "I can't afford that anymore," and he got her a cheaper one for $188 a month. But ultimately, the doctor goes, "Just go to Canada." That's where we're at, and that's absurd. And almost every gas station in my district, there's a donation box from someone who just got sick or someone who just got in the hospital. We have so many GoFundMe sites and pancake breakfasts. It's ridiculous. We're too good of a nation, and so we talk about, hey, you know what? Universal health care, Medicare for all. That should be our goal. And whether it takes steps to get there or not, like that. It would help everybody. You look how Canada got that movement for universal health care. It was Saskatchewan farmers, and so I pushed our rural areas, saying this is up to us. If it's going to come from within, if we really want to do this, and so.
And so he has started doing some town halls, Steve King. Do you believe that it's the pressure that you've been putting on him in that area?
I absolutely, like he wouldn't have done this if we would have lost by 20 points. And so, I mean, again, we lost, but there's a lot of things that came out of this, and him being held accountable, and just he has 4 Republicans running against him in a primary.
One who raised more than $500,000 recently, I believe.
Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting. But at the end of the day, we're running on what we're for and not just who we're against. And it just came out this morning, the Sioux City Journal, which is my hometown paper, largest paper in the district. The #1 article they had, or the #1 story they had in 2019 was him being stripped of his committees in January for his comments relating to white supremacy and white nationalism.
So that's really astounded me. When you've been talking to voters, maybe you've talked to some people who had supported him in the past. What do they think about having like half a congressman or maybe 2/3 of a congressman?
Well, I think that's an added layer to this cycle. And we already saw there was an anti-King sentiment last cycle, and we picked up on that, and we showed that, hey, we're the healthy alternative to that. And so now, not only are we the anti-King sentiment, there's also what is he doing for us? And I think that's the thing. When you have 70,000 more Republicans than Democrats in the district, it's not easy. And for a lot of folks, they just check that box because he's a Republican, and they think, for whatever reason, he's just like everyone else. But then we're starting to see all his controversial statements add up, and that's why we think we're going to win this time.
And where can people find out more about your candidacy?
Everything ScholtenForIowa.com, SCHOLTEN, #4 for Iowa's 4th Congressional District, IOWA.com.
Awesome. Okay, well, great to have you in studio. Good luck on the race.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. David Dayen is the executive editor for the American Prospect, and his writing has appeared virtually everywhere writing can appear. David, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having me on.
Very glad to have you on. You have a recent article about the high cost of insulin and how some of the plans that are being bandied about in Congress right now, even if they had been passed, would not have helped some people who did desperately need help in this area. Can you give us an overview of what your article concerned?
Yeah, that's right. The story was about H.R. 3, which is a bill that actually passed the House of Representatives today on a party line vote. It is not expected to really go anywhere in the Senate. And there was a lot of, this is a bill that Nancy Pelosi made a priority. They've been working on it all year long. She initially was trying to get a compromise with the Trump administration to pass something that could actually become law. Trump turned on her. Surprise, he's not an honest negotiator. He trashed the bill. It's not likely to pass. Yet all the compromises that were put into the bill to elicit Trump's support stayed in the bill, or for the most part anyway, that passed today. And I had a conversation with Nicole Smith Holt and her son, Alec Rayshawn Smith. When he turned 26, he was forced to go off his parents' insurance. And he's a diabetic, was a type 1 diabetic, and could no longer afford insulin when he was uninsured. And he quickly used up all the insulin pens in his house, and he died about 5 days after going off the insurance, tampering with all the insulin pens to get the last bit of insulin out of them. And I asked Nicole Smith Holt, what do you think about this H.R. 3, this drug bill? And she said, well, it wouldn't have helped my son live because the bill sets up a price negotiation system on a certain select number of drugs that Medicare and employer-based patients, people who have employer-based insurance, would get access to those new prices, negotiated prices, but the uninsured would not benefit at all. And so for some reason, there was no effort made to get the uninsured, the most vulnerable people involved in the high cost of prescription drugs, covered by the price negotiation scheme that was set up by H.R. 3.
And just to be clear, in case people might think, okay, well, it seems like there's a gap, but maybe it's a small one. We are talking about millions, potentially tens of millions of Americans would fall into this crack.
Yeah, you're talking about 30 million people.
30 million people.
You're talking about the uninsured.
Yeah. So look, I want, that's just a horrible, horrible story. Should not happen anywhere in the world. Certainly shouldn't happen in a country as rich as ours. And I want to talk to you about some of the potential amendments that were being considered for the bill, some of the other plans. But first, Donald Trump, he does keep saying that this is one of his priorities. The weird drama that's going on between Alex Azar and one of the other aides to the president is apparently over disagreements on how to bring down drug costs. So if this was one area where hypothetically he could have gotten a win, and this bill looks like it moved quite a bit in his direction, why do we believe he turned on Pelosi and the bill at the last minute?
Well, there were a series of meetings between Trump and Greg Walden, who is a ranking member on one of the major committees in the House of Representatives. He's a Republican, and he is in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. And he appears to have had an effect on Trump's thinking on this. Trump has, he said during his campaign that the drug companies get away with murder. He has proposed some ideas like using an international index to set the negotiation price for prescription drugs, and something that's mirrored in H.R. 3, an index of countries that pay lower costs. But ultimately, he turned against it, and he's trying to move towards a Republican bill that's being proposed in the Senate, although Mitch McConnell doesn't even like that one. So it's this tension between populism on the right and their still love affair with pro-business interests, like the pharmaceutical industry. So that's what's kind of holding this up. There was one moment where Trump said, an aide to Trump, the aide you were referring to, this guy Grogan, said in a meeting with conservatives, nobody's going to get to Trump's left on prescription drugs. But apparently that's been thrown by the wayside because drug profits are apparently too precious to get rid of.
Yeah, it's a classic case of promises made, promises squirrel. But anyway, so we can't go deep into it, obviously, because I do want to return to this bill and some of the amendments. But the Senate bill that you're talking about there, it looks like it's not going to become law either. But would that bill have helped in the case that you go into in your article?
No, that bill was really focused on seniors, and it had this little bit where prices could not be increased above the rate of inflation in Medicare, and if they were, there would be a rebate that would be given to the government for all excess profits above the rate of inflation. That's really the only major piece of the Senate bill. That part is also in the House bill, and it was actually the source of a lot of tension between Nancy Pelosi and the Progressive Caucus. The Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal, had an amendment saying, okay, if you're doing that for Medicare, why don't you do that for the 150 million people in employer-sponsored insurance and make sure their drug prices also don't raise above the rate of inflation? And for whatever reason, it's kind of complicated, but Pelosi did not want that to happen. And even though Pramila Jayapal got that amendment through one of the committees, the Education and Labor Committee, it was stripped out of the bill. And at one point, it looked like because of that, the Progressive Caucus was going to vote against this bill and tank it. Vote down the rule for the bill, which would have had them to go back to the drawing board. There was a last-minute negotiation between Jayapal, Mark Pocan, the other co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, and Pelosi, where she got her amendment back into the bill, along with one other thing, which was increasing the number of drugs that could be negotiated in a given year. Initially, the bill had only 25 per year. It now goes up to 50 in the second year and maintains that number. That's still a small portion of prescription drugs that are out there, but it is double what was initially in the bill. So there were some changes, and actually it's more about the actual revolt itself and the fact that the Progressive Caucus was willing to defy leadership to get concessions out of them, which is a kind of a rare thing in Congress. That was an important moment sort of for the dynamic of the House of Representatives. Ultimately, it's based on a bill that's not going to become law. And even the changes that were made were only about 2 of the 4 that they were requesting, including the one about the uninsured and the insulin patient that I was talking about. That was another demand of the Progressive Caucus that they weren't able to get into HR 3 in the final vote.
Now, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, you've got an article that's out right now that you co-authored with Ryan Grimm in The Intercept right now. So they're pushing back against this. What would they like to see happen?
Right, so that was in the context of this fight between the Progressive Caucus and Nancy Pelosi, and Sanders and Warren over the weekend took the Progressive Caucus's side on this. And that was at a moment where it was unclear whether the Progressive Caucus would have the votes to tank the bill. So there was, I mean, this is really about the future of the party as much as anything. Pelosi was very keen to ignore progressive demands on this bill, to sort of dismiss them, to think that she could muscle through whatever she wanted. And it turned out that actually was not the case. That she did have to listen to her left flank on this issue. She didn't give everything, but she did have to give some concessions. And the future of sort of the House of Representatives and how much the progressive left is going to have to be listened to is really what was paramount here. Yeah. And that will be a very important kind of step moving forward. I'm sure it won't be forgotten among the House leadership.
So we only have 1 more minute, but I'm curious, based on your read of Trump's changing attitude, the Mitch McConnell's lack of interest in even his own side's bill, do you think that it's likely that we will get to the general election with nothing passing in this area?
This is obviously a huge issue. It was the #1 issue in the midterms. It'll be a live issue, I believe, in 2020. And Donald Trump promised his constituents that he would do something about the high cost of prescription drugs. You look at something like insulin, which has tripled in a decade, even though it's a 100-year-old drug.
That's crazy.
This is one where whoever becomes a Democratic nominee certainly will have a place to say, Donald Trump, you betrayed your promise here. You had an opportunity to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. I mean, say what you will about Pelosi's H.R. 3, it would have been an advance in whatever way every single Democrat in the House voted for it. So it would have been something, but Trump decided not to go with it. So we're going to hear a lot about this in 2020.
Yeah. And my final advice to Nancy Pelosi would be, if you're going to pass a bill that's not going to get made into law anyway, why not make it a good bill that would actually solve the problem and then campaign based on that?
You're a smart guy.
I try. David Dayen, thank you again for joining us today.
All right, thanks a lot.